In vitro fertilization. What a interesting topic that has become something of a big deal in my life just recently. So in vitro fertilization basically means in vitro, which is like in glass outside of the body, and fertilization is obviously the process of getting a little swimmer close to an egg, close enough that it can make its way in there and turn a single cell into a multiplying cell, which then turns into an embryo, and that embryo turns into a child, creating life. So in vitro fertilization, we're just going to call it IVF, the acronym that everyone knows it by, is something that you really don't want to become too familiar with. Like, no one really grows up thinking, oh, I hope I get to go through the IVF process. And it's one of those things that you sort of hear whispers about it. Well, let's clear something up straight from the get. I'm going to talk specifically from my point of view. I'm only talking about things that have been my experience. I'm only talking about opinions that have come from me. I'm not going to try and get too medical with it and try and explain what is going on. I'm going to try the best to my ability as to what I understand to elaborate on what the process is. But I'm not going to pretend like I know medically what's going on. And also, I'm speaking purely from the male point of view. And I think sort of the reason that I find this interesting for me to talk about and so easy for me to get passionate about talking about it is there is a lot of discussion around IVF for females, and there's a lot that females go through in this process. It's quite invasive. It definitely takes you out of your normal routine, and it kind of forces you to ask questions to yourself, to your relationship, and to your partner that you never would have otherwise asked. So I think it's a sensible thing to understand from the get that it is totally unnatural. There's a whole ethical debate I sort of had with myself about it, which we'll touch on later. It's you only do it if you have to do it. You're not doing it. Like I said, no one grows up thinking like, oh boy, I hope I get to go through the IVF process. And then when it does come time for you to make that decision and pull the trigger on that decision, it's very you're in uncharted territory up until that point. And you actually tend to find that a lot of people have had an experience with IVF, either directly or friends or family that they know have gone through it. And one of the hearsay stats that I've heard of is that 1 in every 8 children delivered in Australia is through IVF, and 1 in every 6 young couples will experience some sort of fertility issues. Now, fertility issues is a wide span of things that can potentially affect your ability to procreate and have children. Again, medically, I don't know what the vastness of that scope is, but I do know what it meant for us. Now, I have to give you a little bit of history. A lot of you who listen to the podcast will probably already know, but let's say you don't know who I am. Let's give you a little bit of background. When I was 22, 23, I had a vasectomy. To get that vasectomy, it was quite a serious operation. I actually originally booked in through the public health system, had it booked in, and then didn't show up to my appointment. I don't know why I didn't show up. It wasn't because I doubted it. I think it was purely just like I was 20-something years old and just silly enough not to show up. As in, the same reason you would run late to a coffee date. It's not because I don't, respect the person I'm going to. It's because I'm bloody hopeless at that age, So I ended up not going to the vasectomy appointment. Didn't have that vasectomy. And then I ended up going through a private doctor. Dr. Snowball was his name. And I don't know how I got a hold of him. I think I just Googled vasectomy Perth, and he had the best looking website, great marketing, and ended up going to have an appointment with Dr. Snowball. And he said, happy to do it for you, but I want you to come back in 6 months. I'm not going to book you in now. I want you to come back in 6 months. All right. To the day, 6 months later, get an appointment, rock up. I'm here for it. Let's go. He said, sweet, we're going to do a bit of a psychological evaluation to make sure that you're in a stable mind space to be making this decision, and I want to understand what your reasoning is. And look, to be very honest with you, I couldn't verbatim tell you what my reasoning was, but it was along the lines of, I don't understand why we put females through this, what I now know to be quite torturous process of having to worry about contraception wholly and solely on them, which is, going on the pill or getting the bar in the arm or all sorts of very uncomfortable sounding things. And I think logically it didn't make sense that we have this ability to take the bullet out of the gun. It's like my thing always was, if you're going to be playing with guns, you want to make sure there's no bullets in them, otherwise you might accidentally shoot someone. And obviously, metaphorically in this situation, shooting someone will be getting pregnant. Now, my opinion of the world and children and marriage was quite clear. It's that I wasn't going to have children. I was never going to get married. I was just going to be that cool old guy with tattoos and motorbikes. And that was a great fit for that part of my life at the time. And it actually proved to be a really good decision because, to no fault of their own, there were some people that I was involved with during my 20s that had I had children with them, I probably wouldn't be having the quality of life that I have now with my fiance. And I feel like I'm constantly just in the best part of my life. Like, I never feel like there's the golden years that are behind me. I feel like this is it. Like, I'm in it, I'm enjoying it. Business is good. We're engaged. We're in a beautiful house. We're in love. It's beautiful. And the longer it goes on, the better it gets. I really feel like this is great. Now, the reason that I say that is because had I not had a vasectomy and had I had children with, a previous partner, I'm sure it would have been great. But I'm quite glad right now, even though it's contributed to the fact that that we're doing IVF, I'm quite happy that I made that decision. So fast forward, I think it was 7 years or 8 years, and Lucia and I have been together for, at this point, we've been together for maybe 5 years, I think. And we start talking about like, if anyone was to get married, it would be us. I've sort of like went from being this, when I met Larissa, it was like, we're not getting married, we're not having kids. I'm just a cool guy and you're a cool girl. We're going to keep hanging out till we're not hanging out anymore. And that sort of got to a point where we're like 5 years in and we'd had a couple of, we'd moved in together and we'd actually moved house a couple times together. And then all of a sudden we're saving up money to go traveling in a caravan and spend all this time together and get a dog and all these things. And I'm sort of like, fucking, I think we're dating, hey. And sure enough, that led to feelings of, well, actually, I'm pretty sure I do want to spend as long as possible with this girl. And in layman's terms, like, that's getting married. That's, all the difference between that decision and getting married is making that commitment in front of your friends and family and if you're spiritual under the Creator. And it's isolating that this is what we want, and we're going to continue doing this. We're going to celebrate that in front of our friends and family so that everyone knows what to expect of us. We're going to be together. We're going to be doing this and continuing to build this life together. That's what marriage is. And then once you make that sort of commitment in your mind, right? So obviously we're engaged right now and we are to be married, and I'm looking forward to being married as well. But having that commitment in your mind enough, as especially, again, I'm speaking from the male point of view, to go and buy a ring and to get on one knee and to ask her dad for permission and all these things. It's like you don't do these things unless you're serious, right? And it feels like the momentum that you get from making these decisions and executing on these decisions and letting that person know that you're this serious. It's like, well, the next step is sort of having kids. And I think I was against getting married, but I was dead against having kids. And it's all the standard reasons that a young person might have. I don't like the state of the world and I couldn't possibly imagine bringing kids into it. And, I don't want to replicate what happened to me in my childhood. Pause. Nothing bad happened to me in my childhood. I had a childhood, like everyone has a childhood. The worst thing that has happened to you is the worst thing that has happened to you. So I have things that happened to me that in the grand scheme of things, alongside other people's terrible experiences, mine's nothing to really be worried about. With that said, I still feel like there are parts of my childhood that I wouldn't want my children to go through. I also, part of the reason not wanting to have kids is I don't know if I could be a parent or if I have what it takes to be a parent. I don't know, there are times where I've looked around in my life and it's like, yeah, sure, I don't mind the situation that I'm in, but I couldn't imagine bringing a life into this situation and being responsible for it. And that's another thing. The responsibility of being a parent is like now, 24/7, until you die, you have something that's going to have a piece of you and you're going to have a piece of it. Your heart is going to live inside this other form of life. And regardless of whether you like it or not, you're going to feel connected to it and you're going to feel responsible to it. And that is an overwhelming debt at that age. It feels like something that you'll never be able to pay back, something that's always going to hang over your head and be, I don't know, I guess you could almost class it as a burden at that age, in your early 20s, the thought of having a kid, especially if you don't have someone that, you've got on lock, that you love, that you feel like you could do that process with, that you feel like you could take on that journey and that experience with. So that all just sort of accumulated into like, I'm not going to have kids. But then when you're getting down to one knee and you're like, this is the girl that I love and this is who I want to marry and spend my life with, and this is the woman that I want to introduce to, my extended family and who I want to experience life with. It's like, well, if I were to take on that responsibility, it'd be with her, right? And how fun. It's beautiful. So I think the conversation sort of started as like, oh, wouldn't it be crazy if we had kids? Oh, if we had kids, would you want a boy or a girl, and how many would you want, and what would their names be, and like what would you look forward to about it? And then, you start floating this idea with friends and family. And then, for me, I remember it was the first time like someone said, oh, you'd be a great dad. And I'm like, you reckon? Like, why? You're just saying that or what? It's like, oh, dude, you love being silly, you love like teaching, and you love learning, and you love like communicating, and see how you are with your dog, and you're very like, I was like, oh, like I remember that conversation. I remember like, oh yeah, that does all make sense. And I don't know, I want to say like a switch flicked, but it was like a switch flicking over, a period of time to like all of a sudden one day I remember waking up and being like, oh, I'm definitely going to have kids with Riz because that's what this is, right? So, cool, we're going to have kids. Now, that sort of like started this, I would say that's where the journey starts, is when you go like, okay, cool, we both want to have kids. We're both in a situation where it would be viable, as in, can we financially do it? Do we both feel like we've done enough of, adolescent, early adult living out of our system so that, we're happy to go like, right, if we don't go out for 2 years straight, is that a problem? We're both in a situation where like, having to go sober and not drinking alcohol, not smoking cigarettes, which purely is me. Riz finds it quite easy to not do that, whereas I like to party with the boys. And I think the cool part about coming to that situation is maybe men sometimes feel like they're forced to do that. They're like forced to have this moment where they're like, right, I'm done with drinking, I'm done with partying. And then they do that and they kind of get a bit resentful. I didn't feel any of that. I was excited to have something to quit for. I went pretty hard on the partying and whatnot for a little while. So I think by the time I got to this point where it's like, I would love a reason to stop, and what a better catalyst than because I want to have children, right? So all these like little blocks start moving around in your mind. You're like, cool, all right, maybe if we're going to completely go sober, then why don't we focus on having like a good diet as well? And we'll make sure we get to bed on time, we'll make sure we're hydrated all the time. And you just start like going like, okay, we'll just sort of like, clean the house metaphorically. But obviously one of the big pauses for me was having a vasectomy. Now, again, not medically. I'm going to be very illustratively graphic, right? So a vasectomy is the severing of your vas deferens. Now, your vas deferens joins your balls to your dick. I was going to try and get a little bit more technical than that, but essentially it's stopping semen coming from your testicles up into your ejaculate, so that when you do ejaculate, you still ejaculate the same amount, by the way. Like if you ejaculate on day 1 and then have a vasectomy and then ejaculate on day 5, everything is the exact same. Nothing visually changes, nothing feeling wise changes. You're still the exact same person, but you're sterile. You can't get anyone pregnant. So all it does is it cuts out the small amount. It's like the amount of sperm that's in ejaculate is actually quite small. There's a lot of sperm per milliliter, but there's a small amount of sperm per ejaculate. So basically cutting that tube essentially means that the sperm will no longer be a part of your ejaculate. What happens is it actually just gets reabsorbed back into your bloodstream. So you cut that, you perform a sexual act by yourself with a partner, whatever it is. And when you do orgasm and ejaculation happens the exact same, but that semen, instead of going through the vas deferens and into that ejaculate, it actually goes in, like it just goes out the vas deferens. It's now disconnected and into your bloodstream and gets reabsorbed. So connecting those two tubes, let's talk about it. When you get a vasectomy, essentially what happens is they cut that, and the old school way they used to do it was they would tie a knot in both ends. Now, Dr. Snowball actually did a method. I don't know if it's unique to just him or if it's like something that's adopted by a lot of doctors, but essentially what it is cutting the Vans deferens, leaving the part that goes to your penis they just floats basically, and the part that comes where the semen comes up through, he actually just packed it full of gauze and put like a little rubber band over it, and your body eventually absorbs that and just blocks it off. It's just like a blockage in that pipe. So basically, semen goes to it and it just breaks down and goes through your and into your bloodstream. Again, don't know medically how it happens, but I do know that I tried to get someone pregnant when I had my vasectomy, and it never worked. So that was a successful vasectomy. Now, with that meant that if you ever did want to join the two back together, you didn't have to cut off those two knotted ends. You only cut off that little bit of blockage at the end, find the floating Vans deferens and connect it. Now, one thing I didn't know is, and I'm realizing this just now, is you've got two Vans deferens or two tubes that they cut during a vasectomy. It was my understanding that there was only one, but upon reflection, in my vasectomy reversal, I had two scars on my ball bag. Sorry to not use more technical terms, but just so everyone understands. I had two scars where he'd gone in and joined up two sets of pipes. I don't know whether it's one or two pipes. Anyway, it's not even about IVF. I'm so far off the track talking about my ball bag. So, had the vasectomy reversal. Now, vasectomies are like 10 minutes in the chair with a local anesthetic, maybe 15, and I'm going to say 48 hours of recovery, just sitting down, not doing anything too strenuous. Vasectomy reversal is, I'm going to say, between 4 and 6 weeks off work, and for the first week, fully expect to not be able to move. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's a 2 or 3 hour surgery that you are under anesthesia for. It's a lot. It's a lot. When you wake up, you're pretty banged up, and in the following days, you have bruising from like your inner thighs to your belly button sort of thing. Like everything gets real black and blue, and your shit just swells up so crazy. Like it's pretty uncomfortable. But also, this was essentially like step one in our path to pregnancy, and also like a price that I'm willing to pay. Again, for every potential pregnancy that I didn't have with the wrong person, for being able to have that time of evaluation and coming to a realization that A, I did want to have children, and B, I found someone who would fit that bill. I couldn't imagine what it would be like going like, I really want children, but I just can't find the right person, because I feel like you don't want to be having children out of desperation for children. You want to be having children out of like a feeling of like, this feels good. This feels like, yep, I'm happy with this. Let's do this, you know? So vasectomy reversal is cool. It's great. I think about 6 weeks later, 7-8 weeks later, the doctor sent me for a semen analysis, to which I completed. And really interesting, semen analysis came back. Obviously, with these sorts of things, you get sent to the doctor. The doctor calls you and says whatever the result is. So I got a call from the doctor, and I said, hey, and he goes, hey, man, like, obviously, the intention for having a vasectomy reversal is to make sure that semen comes into your ejaculate and gets her pregnant, because that's the only, just to repeat, that's the only function of putting those two pipes back together again, is to make sure that the part that gets a girl pregnant gets to the girl, right? Very simple concept. He called me and he's like, yeah, man, all good. I was like, cool. So me taking that as all good, that means that I'd be able to get her pregnant now. So we practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. And I want to say we got probably 2 or 3 months in. And for anyone who's tried to get pregnant before, maybe you're listening to this because you're just starting your journey with pregnancy. Maybe you're listening to this because you're in the middle of IVF, or you've done IVF, it's been successful or not successful. you will either know or be aware of the fact that or you can probably imagine every month that, she's coming up to getting her period, you're sort of in this hopeful stage of like, oh, are we about to find out our life is going to change, right? This goal that we've got, is it about to be realized by the universe? Are we about to have a child? Are we about to be pregnant and start that exciting process of, knowing what it is to see a little version of you and get to teach it everything and get to have those moments and watch all its firsts and build a life for your now growing family, And the first time it doesn't happen, you're like, yeah, cool, probably a bit early anyway, all good. Second time it doesn't happen, you start to get a little bit like, okay, I spent my whole adult life trying not to get girls pregnant, and now all I want to do is get a girl pregnant, and it's not happening. Third month, fourth month, fifth month, sixth month, and then you start feeling like, is something wrong? My personal experience was I wasn't emotionally jacked by it. Like I wasn't like crying and in despair and not understanding. And, to be very honest, I feel like every month that getting pregnant was delayed because of the state of our business and our life, I felt like, okay, cool, would love to be pregnant as soon as possible, and I'll make it work no matter what the situation. But for every month that I get, it gives me one more month to prepare myself for when this happens, because I know when this happens, it's not like it's a new chapter starting. You're essentially closing the book of your life before having life that you're responsible for and starting a new book that is the title. So part of me was like, damn, I'd really like to start the journey to being a father. But the other part was like, oh, okay, cool. One more month. I get one more month, thank you. I believe that everything is timed perfectly. I believe that if we're not pregnant right now, it's because there's a greater plan for us. I'm not going to get in the way. I'm not going to trip myself over. I'm just going to show up. So I show up and I keep being the best I can be for me and for Riz, and we keep doing it. But we hit month number 6, and now 6 months where you've been following all the rules. It sort of felt like, damn it, what's going on now? Caveat to all of this, Riz is very well versed in the world of like once Riz sort of like once we made the decision that we're going to be going for this new goal to get pregnant, to start a family, to do all of that, she took that very seriously. And for those who don't know, Riz is my fiance. Her name's Larissa, nickname is Riz. I call her Riz. Everyone calls her Riz. And to her credit, she took that very seriously, and she started immediately, like researching, reading, listening to podcasts, talking to people, as you do, like talking to other young mothers. People have, had these different experiences. Also, at the same time, a very good friend of hers, a couple of friends actually, going through pregnancies, having their babies, and I've also got friends who have, got kids of all age, like young kids, and also just getting pregnant and going through pregnancy. Also friends who are trying to get pregnant. And yeah, she sort of was like, hey, it's been 6 months. To like classes like having fertility issues, you sort of need to be trying for 12 months before doctors will do anything about, referring you to a fertility clinic. So at 6 months, we sort of went and had the conversation with our doctor, who's a great doctor. I mean, for anyone who doesn't have a great doctor, the importance of having a good one, because without it, you feel like you're just asking someone for a prescription every time you go to the doctor. But our doctor is not that at all. He immediately was like, okay, cool. Let's get you tested to Riz. Let's get all your bloods. Let's see where you're at. I think he got me to do blood tests as well. And then also, can you get me your semen analysis from when you had your vasectomy reversal? So we're now talking, 5-6 months down the track of getting those results. You're all good. Off you go. Now, I don't know how much Riz is comfortable with me disclosing, but she did have a cyst on one of her ovaries that I think perforated's a word. Let's say exploded, because for comic value, it's hilarious to think of something exploding inside of someone's body. But yeah, that ruptured, and she had to have like a bit of an emergency surgery. This is earlier on in our relationship. I want to say like year 3-ish, maybe around then. She had this cyst rupture, and we had to go to A&E. She had emergency surgery. We didn't know if they had actually taken the ovary out or if they had just fixed it, cleared out the internal bleeding, and then sent her home. So we had to figure out what are like all of her levels looking like what's her blood work like, does she have 2 ovaries or 1, what does my semen analysis look like and what does all my blood work look like? Without getting too into it, purely because it's fucking boring and the stuff that matters is what I'll hit. My blood work was good. Riz's ovary was there. She has 2 ovaries. Awesome. Her blood work came back and she had a low, I think it's ECG. Basically, it means it's the indication that of how many eggs the female body is holding on to. Now, females are born with a specific amount of eggs. It does vary from female to female, and depending on a whole bunch of variables, depends on how many eggs they have, also how early they start their period, because obviously every cycle, every period, 1 egg is released. Now, I can talk a little bit about the female reproductive system. I've been thrown into the deep end and forced to learn all these things. So I'm going to explain it to the best of my knowledge. And if there's anything that I get incorrect, well, there's nothing you can do about it because you're not here in the room with me. So bear with me. What happens is 28-day cycle. When a female has her cycle, essentially what is happening is the body releases 1 egg as a follicle. That follicle then develops to a certain point, and then if you have semen around that follicle, it gets in the egg, turns into an embryo. I'm missing 3 steps there, but they're the bits that we need to know for now. Gets the embryo, gets the egg pregnant, turns into an embryo. The embryo then develops into a child. Boom, we've got pregnancy. Now, what happens is if a girl starts her period early in life, so let's say she starts, at 10 or 12 or whatever, every period, so roughly 12, 13 periods a year, 1 egg is released. So you go, okay, well, it's not that many eggs at a time, right? Well, it is 12 eggs a year. And then if you think like a female has a period from anywhere between 10 and 15 to, when they go through menopause, sometimes in their 50, you're not looking at that many eggs. You might be looking at like 50 eggs in total. Again, these numbers are very rough. I don't know. Point to the story is Riz has a low egg count. Also, my semen analysis from the vasectomy reversal had isolated the fact that, had good pH, didn't really have great volume, didn't really have good, they weren't swimming the right direction, they're like swimming in circles, and they didn't really have good shape. So essentially, just shit semen. Now, if we put, if my semen find their way into, this is so graphic, if they did get themselves in a position where they're around an egg, A, they're probably not going to be able to swim the distance. B, there's not that many of them that are fighting for it. And C, even if they do get there, they don't have great morphology. They're not the ideal sperm for the job. So, yeah, I'm gonna say bit of a setback then, because then you're learning okay, low egg count, we don't have a lot of eggs to begin with. We don't have a lot of healthy semen if they do make it to the egg to begin with, get to the egg eventually. And then also, there's what we didn't know at the time, there's the actual timing of having sex and getting pregnant. You think oh, yep, cool, we just need to, there's when females ovulate is the best chance for them to get pregnant. This is when they're all friendly with you all of a sudden, is when they're ovulating. So the thought is you're okay, cool, on the day of ovulation, we'll just have as much sex as possible. Just put as many swimmers in there as we can and hope for the best. Please, please, please. Now, we were tracking Riz's period on an app. The app assumed when the ovulation was because of it's just general knowledge that it happens around, I think it's whatever day it is. I want to say day 12 or something. Now, the problem is that's just based off averages, right? So we end up doing, I want to say we did another 2 months. And don't forget, when you go to the doctor, you get your blood test done, you get the semen analysis report sent back to the other doctor. I get my blood test done. You're waiting for all of this accumulative information to end up at the doctor and then book in another appointment and then go and find out the information, then take the next step. So every step that you do is spaced out by 4 weeks. And don't forget, you're still trying to get pregnant every month and you're still being let down every month. And all of a sudden now you're sprinkling in this bad news. Oh, you've got a low egg count. Oh, your semen isn't that good. And the problem is now is every time there's any results are uploaded to your MyGov. So what do? We grab those results, put them in ChatGPT and say, well, tell me what these results mean. So we're sort of getting an idea of what's going on before the doctor tells us. The doctor looks at it and says, look, Normally, you need to have these sort of results after 12 months of trying. Normally after 12 months of trying and you come to a doctor and you're not having any luck, you go to a fertility specialist and then they would put you through all of these tests anyway. We'll give you a referral for a fertility specialist and then they'll put you through those tests. We had only been 6 or 7 months in and he said, look, we've done the tests. We know you've got a low egg count. We know that you've got sperm issues and we know that you're not getting pregnant naturally. Because of our ages, I'm 33, Riz is 26, we're going to expedite the process a little bit quicker. We're just going to refer you to a fertility specialist now so you can start the process because I don't want you to try for another 6 months just to learn that, well, falling on deaf ears because we know that you're already starting off on the back foot. So it's great. We're like, cool. I'm pretty sure there are places in Bunbury. There are places in South Perth as well, but we went for one in Joondalup called Fertility North. Now, Fertility North is, we've come to learn sort of the duck's nuts in fertility treatment centres. They immediately got us on for a consultation and they wanted to track Riz's period, which essentially is just following a cycle from day 1 to day 28 and getting regular blood tests so they can actually monitor exactly what's going on with her bloods, her hormones, and figure out things like exactly when she ovulates. So we do all that. They also wanted a new sperm sample from me for a semen analysis because it's actually quite common after a vasectomy or reversal that because there's been so long without semen coming through that pipe and clearing out into the ejaculate that you might just have crappy sperm that because don't forget, sperm is still being produced by your body. Sperm is still being shot up that Van deferens pipe until they hit that blockage and then they're just stopping. So there's still regular production and they're still sort of just like loitering there until they break down and disappear. Now, you think if you have a healthy sex life and personal life and or personal life, that pipe is getting traffic through it once every 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. It's not happening like every time you urinate, which might be like, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. It's happening once every handful of days, right? So you get a vasectomy reversal on day 1. Well, by day, let's say 60, which is 2 months later, you've only had maybe 60 divided by 4. What's that? 15. You 15, 20 emissions through it. So there's still likelihood that there's like dead sperms that are laying around, sperms that are half living, sperm that isn't of great, quality. And on top of that, your body is now actually producing sperm that ends up going somewhere, right? So point that I'm making here is that a semen analysis right after your vasectomy reversal versus a semen analysis 6 months later, the difference in the sperm health can be dramatic. And in my case, it was. It was literally a case of like, cool, your volume is great, your pH is great, the morphology is great, the DNA structure is great, the movement is great, everything's good. The only problem is you've got a really high antibody rate. Now, plot twist, what they don't tell you about, when you get a vasectomy, the one thing they say is assume that it can't be reversed because the reversal process is quite in-depth and difficult and you sort of want someone who's doing it all the time to really hit the nail on the head. But you have to assume essentially that this is a for life thing. My understanding was that, okay, so if I get a reversal and the reversal is successful, then we don't really have to worry about anything else. That's all we're concerned about is like, okay, semen are being produced and if semen can make it all the way to the JAPSI, we're good. But turns out that's not the case. What happens is once that Van deferens pipe has been severed, right, and then you rejoin it, well, the body knows that membrane of that pipe has been severed. And what it does is it actually creates an antibody that I don't know where it's produced and where it meets the sperm, but the sperm then gets covered in this antibody, which is like a force field. And it stops the sperm from being able to penetrate the egg, and it's like sticky. So any sperm that have this antibody on it, they sort of stick together. So now they're moving slower as they're trying to swim to the egg. And then when they get to the egg, they're all sort of fighting each other, fighting the force field to never be able to get through to the egg. Well, fuck me, right? So now we've got this new problem on our hands. We're like, sweet, sperm's all good, but it actually isn't good because like even once it gets to where it's got to go, which there might not be an egg there because we know we've got a low egg count, and a low egg count can mean, sure, she can be going through her cycle normally, she can be ovulating, but her body is still not letting go of an egg. It might have a follicle holds the egg, but doesn't necessarily have to have an egg. So she may be having periods and cycles where she has a follicle, like she's ovulating, her body's saying, yes, give me sperm, I want to get pregnant. And then sperm's making its way to it, and A, it couldn't penetrate the wall of the egg, and B, there might not be an egg there to penetrate at all. Well, fuck me. Okay, cool. Got a little bit to deal with. All good. We also get some news about Riz's cycle that we got from the tracking it every few days over the whole cycle, and this really got us. So she actually ovulates for that particular cycle, which may or may not be indicative of every cycle, but we do have a second bit of data that I'll jump back to later, that she ovulated 3 days earlier than what it said she was on her app. Right? So I'll say that again. We thought she was ovulating, let's say it's day 12. She's actually ovulating on day 9. Ovulation is your peak capacity for the female to get pregnant in that time. That's when you want the sperm next to the egg and you want it to be happening, right? Now, your refractory process for sperm production in the male is every 2 days, which means that every 2 days, the sperm is regenerating itself. So that ejaculate, regardless of how many times it's coming out, is only getting fresh sperm out like every 2 days. What this means is that if you're having heaps of sex on the day of ovulation, then only the first ejaculation really holds the secret sauce. The rest of it has small amounts of sperm, if not any, and is purely just the act of two people making love. How beautiful. Aww. Now, the interesting part about this is if she's ovulating 3 days earlier, so she ovulates, that means that 3 days later, we're then having heaps of sex. By that time, the window of ovulation is essentially closed. Now, we also learn that the best frequency or method to get pregnant is essentially having sex 3 times a week without fail, regardless of where she's at in her cycle. Because sperm can actually live inside the vagina for up to 5 days, alive and swimming. It's a perfect temperature, pH, everything for them to live in there. And this is really good because what it means is you can have sex. Let's say she ovulates on Wednesday. You can have sex on Monday. And those semen will live in her body the whole time until that follicle makes its way down, presents itself. There's semen there. Boom. Penetration, fertilisation. Beautiful. So what that means is, let's say you're trying to get pregnant right now and you know your girl ovulates, let's say next Monday, and it's Monday today. So you're a week away from ovulation. To put yourself in the best possible position to get her pregnant is to have sex every 2 days and abstain from ejaculation altogether outside of those sexual encounters, which means, it doesn't mean have sex today, beat off tonight, beat off tomorrow morning, have sex the following day. It just means only ejaculate in her and every 2 days, right? So graphic. So that means that up until that period, we've been having heaps of sex, the wrong frequency. So we're having heaps of sex of the wrong frequency on the wrong day with semen that are surrounded by antibodies into her body, which has a limited amount of eggs. And it's an interesting feeling, right? Because you're like, okay, well, the simple fact is she still has eggs and I still have sperm. It's not impossible. It's just a correlation of these two things that need to meet each other to create life that we need to get right. Now, if we've been trying 3 days late for the past 6-7 months, well, we don't necessarily have fertility issues. We have timing issues. But the doctor disagreed with me. He's like, no, with her low egg count and with your antibodies on your sperm, you have fertility issues, which for the sake of the assistance that we get from the Australian government by having fertility issues in this extremely expensive process, I am thankful that we do have fertility issues in that there is a little bit of remuneration, probably not the word, that there is a little bit of literal financial assistance in all of this. Now, would I want to be going through IVF vocationally or volunteering to do it? Absolutely not. But since this is the path that we are forced to take, then for that I am a little bit grateful that there is some assistance. Now, from there, we sort of like isolate, like, okay, cool, IVF is probably the next step. Now, by this point, Riz has done all of the research. She's got a friend who's had a child through IVF. She is very familiar with the process. She understands what's involved. She understands a little bit of the money concern with it. And she understands like what is required from both of us and what the future sort of looks like. Now, at this point, I'm building a business. I'm doing a podcast. I'm maintaining, a healthy relationship at home. I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm into my hobbies. I'm doing all these things. This isn't something that I really have adopted as something that I need to know just yet, because up until that point, it hadn't been essential for us. It hadn't been something that I'm like, I need to understand what that is because we're definitely going to be doing. Up to that point, it's just been a couple doctor's appointments, getting some bloods done, fucking beaten off into a cup for them to look under a microscope. Like, it's still pretty chill up until this point. But then when you sort of go like, hey, cool, we're going to be doing IVF. What's IVF? I mean, sure, like I said before, we've sparingly heard about it. We all know someone who's gone through it. We all have friends that have, they know someone or a family member, or they themselves are a child of IVF. But what is it? In vitro fertilisation brings me back to the original point, how I started this. Sweet. So IVF essentially is the process of fertilizing an egg outside of the body. There's two primary methods of IVF and ICSI. ICSI is an acronym for something that I don't remember, is hard to pronounce, and doesn't really matter. It's the second method, right? Essentially, what IVF is getting the egg or eggs outside of the female body and into a lab. It's then mixing them with semen, waiting for them to get pregnant. Waiting for them to be penetrated by a semen, and, they then culture them, and once it looks good under a microscope, they put it back in her. Simple, right? So not simple. So I'm now going to break down what IVF is to my deepest understanding, and trust that I'm a very good questions asker, so much so that I think it might even annoy Riz a little bit. So I've asked all the questions to the doctors and the nurses. I've done my own research. Again, Riz knows all this inside out. I've just really had to familiarize myself with it because A, it's happening to Riz, and B, I want to know these things because one day I'm going to tell my children about, you in no essence or possible way a mistake. You were so deliberately wanted, and you were wanted so bad that we went so far for you, So IVF is essentially stimulating particular hormones by adding those hormones into the female body so that A, it produces heaps more follicles than what it normally does. So typically a female produces one follicle. Follicle can have an egg in it. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to have an egg in it, but the follicle is the environment for the egg to live within. Typically, if the female body creates or produces whatever it is, more than one follicle, it has another hormone that will then tell the body, we only want one because we don't want multiple pregnancies. We just want to harbor one child to get rid of all the other follicles. So the first hormone that females are injected with is this hormone that creates more follicles. And then the second hormone is one that tells the body to not destroy the rest of those follicles. So we're saying, hey, make heaps of follicles and then keep them, right? So when I say you're giving the girl these hormones, it's through one of two methods that we've experienced. One is the needle pen, which is very similar to the one that you give to someone when they're having anaphylaxis. And essentially it looks like a thick pen, like it's about that big, which is like the size of a thick pen. Essentially, you take the end off, you screw on the actual needle end, you then wind out the back end to a particular number, whatever your administration amount is. You then hold it like it's how would you describe that? You hold it with like a fist with your thumb over the end. It's like a clicky style pen, by the way. You then press that into a little area of fat and then put your thumb over the end and push it in, hold it for 10 seconds and then pull it out, discard of your needle, and then put your pen back in the fridge ready for tomorrow. So that is actually fairly easy, right? The second one is just like a syringe with a needle on the end of it that you poke in, and then you push the liquid in, you push the plunger down on the back, and it pushes the liquid into the body. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about that. One thing I never thought that I would be doing is injecting someone with any sort of medication or anything. You know, like I've sort of joked about, like in your mind as a crazy young man, you're like, man, if I was ever to do any injecting, it's on my deathbed, it would be heroin, you know? But obviously, it's stupid. That's a joke. So when you're forced with the reality of like, all right, we're doing IVF, it involves doing these injections. Jake, you're going to be the one doing the injections. And footnote, I wouldn't want Riz to inject herself anyway. I wouldn't want Riz to have to like, you know, sort out her own medication and then put herself through that, because if it was me who had to do it to me, that's fine, and I would do it, but I don't want her to have to do that. And I would rather be uncomfortable doing that to her than her being purely uncomfortable by herself. So to recap, you've got your pen needle, simple. You've got your syringe needle, a little bit less simple, but you're doing a series of these additional hormones to the female body, so we get heaps of those follicles. We tell the body to protect those follicles, and then you have what's called a trigger injection, which is actually 2 injections. Just the pen again, it's a different color pen, and it's 2 of those back to back at a very specific time. I think it's like 36 hours and 15 minutes before egg retrieval. Now, egg retrieval is a surgical process where they can either completely general anesthetic knock you out, or local anesthetic just from the belly button down, and they essentially go inside the female body and retrieve those follicles, right? Now, during that process, they get all the follicles that they can see on the ultrasound. They then take those follicles directly to the lab, and they find out which of those follicles actually have eggs in them, and then of those eggs, they are immediately trying to fertilize them with sperm. So, couple little bits here that I've jumped over. There is a process somewhere halfway through starting your IVF needles and getting the egg retrieval surgery where they do a scan. And that scan is an internal, what do you call it when you're looking for a baby? Ultrasound. It's an internal ultrasound. So essentially they use a wand internally, and they are just looking at the ovaries, literally looking for the follicles, which I did snap a picture of. It's fascinating what this looks like. So if you're looking at the camera, the video, you'll be able to see it's like literally those balls that you can see, especially down the bottom corner there, this colored version, that's actually a 3D rendition of what they look like inside of a uterus. Now, what they're looking for there is how many follicles do you have on each side, and they're looking for the size of the follicles to be a particular size. I think it's between like 1 and 2.5 millimeters to indicate how many do we have, are they of the right size to be able to work with, and how close are we to the egg retrieval. Typically they do 2 scans, so they have an A and B measurement going like, yes, these follicles are growing in size, we're right to progress. And then they book in the egg retrieval based off that information. Once they book that in, they then give you warning or advice as to when to do the trigger shots, which then perfectly prepares her 36 hours and 15 minutes before that surgery to then go in, be knocked out, have them taken out, and immediately fertilized. So basically, by the time she wakes up from general anesthetic from the egg retrieval, she will then know how many eggs were inside those follicles, and then by the end of the day, they will then be able to tell us how many of those eggs have successfully been fertilized. Now, I mentioned previously, we're just going to pause the process right there. I just want to talk a little bit about the 2 methods of IVF. The first one, IVF. The second one is ICSI, I-C-S-I, that acronym is. Now, IVF is essentially getting that egg, putting it in a test tube and filling it up full of semen and waiting, right? So you've got all these live swimmers. There's an egg there somewhere, and it's literally just like one finds it. They all find it. You know, you've seen the picture of the egg and the sperm all around it, but only one penetrates and gets in the egg and creates life. ICSI is where they essentially have the egg, and they get one, they look at a sperm sample under a microscope. They look for a really strong, good-looking sperm. They pull him out with a baby tiny little needle, and then they put that needle into the egg, and then they inject him into the egg. Just let that sink in. They pick one specific, particular sperm that looks healthy, and then they get the egg, they inject the needle into that egg, push the sperm in there, and then pull the needle out. So it's funny actually, because the doctor said to me, he goes, obviously, there's some different opinions about the, IVF and ICSI and which way is the right way or the wrong way. And I said, dude, is this like an ethical thing? Are you hitting me with like an ethical thing? Because it's a difference between the strongest sperm finding the egg and a sperm that you pick finding the egg. He goes, yeah. I said, brother, what does ethics matter when it's all happening in a lab? I mean, if you really want to have that discussion, then don't do IVF. Keep trying naturally and let the strongest sperm fight his way out of the antibodies and find the egg that might be there. Dude, give me a fucking child. That's all that matters. A healthy, happy child growing in her belly is all that matters at this point. That's why we're here. That's why I'm having this conversation. We've changed our whole life to be ready to be parents, and now we're going to talk about an ethical dilemma. If you think ICSI is the way to go, if you think it gives us a higher chance at getting pregnant, then we do ICSI, right? And that's, sorry, I made that sound like I was a bit aggressive. He was definitely leaning more towards like we should do ICSI. It gives us a better chance. We know we're dealing with antibodies. We know that actually it's probably a good time to mention it. When I had my vasectomy, Dr. Snowball made me freeze sperm. So I had sperm frozen, 8 years ago, and literally didn't mention it until I want to say like a month before this final consultation where we actually started IVF. And I was like, it's probably worth mentioning. I actually did a like free sperm when I had my vasectomy, and the doctor's like, why didn't you bring that up earlier? I'm like, I guess I didn't really see how it was like important, but now I can see that's literally the only reason that you would freeze sperm, just in case one day you want to have kids, and now this is that one day and I want to have kids, and I'm sorry, I'm realizing this in the moment, like, all right, let's start the process and get that sperm from where it was to where you guys are. And the one thing they said is like, hey, first things first, there is a hectic amount of sperm in this sample, which, 22-year-old Jake's just fucking built for it. And then the second thing is, if we use this sperm for IVF, which is where you get the test tube, you put the egg in there and you just fill it up full of sperm, we're going to use most of it in one shot. Now, they separate the sample by what they call straws. So essentially a straw is like a segment of semen, and of each of these straws, it might have, X amount of semen in there. Now, I had 26 straws, which was a good amount for one sample. Now, they said if we do IVF, where we basically put the egg in there and fill the test tube up, to get a viable amount of sperm, it may take between 15 and 20 straws. So you'll only get one shot using that really good semen sample that we have from when you had your vasectomy. But if we use ICSI, we have 26 attempts at it, because we only thaw out one straw at a time. So if we're doing ICSI, we'll throw out one straw. It might have 10,000 sperm in it. We pick the strongest looking sperm. We go for it. Great. So we've now got a situation where we go, cool, we've got today's sperm, which, by the way, we can use today's sperm that has antibodies on it if we use ICSI, because the antibodies don't matter if you've got a needle that's going into the egg and then the sperm is being pushed into the egg. It doesn't matter at all. So now we're going like, okay, if we use ICSI with the old sperm, we're not going to waste it. If we use ICSI with the new sperm, it doesn't matter because it's all good. What we do know is we can't use IVF with the old sperm because we'll use it all in one hit and there's no guarantee that it'll work. Also, we can't use IVF with the new sperm because it's got the antibodies on it. So we have to go ICSI. We have to go the individual sperm picked out by the nurse or the person, right, injected into the egg. Cool. Great. All right. Sweet. We know we're doing ICSI. So from this point forward, you know that we are locked in on doing ICSI. Now, the one question that was asked was, do we use the old sperm? Do we use a new sperm? Is there any advantage or disadvantage? Like, you sort of think, okay, cool. If we use sperm that is from right now, does that sperm have all the wisdom and knowledge that I've collected in the past 8 years? Or does the old sperm actually perform better because it's got less DNA fragmentation, it hasn't been through as much, haven't done as much, like alcohol and shitty food and bad lifestyle choices? Or which one is it? And the doctor said, look, both of them are young. You know what I mean? Like, yes, 23-year-old sperm is better than 33-year-old sperm, but when it comes down to it, you're still quite young, you're still quite healthy, you haven't made shocking life decisions, so it's pretty much of a muchness. What we're going to use, we're going to use the old sperm, but we're also going to get you to produce a sample the day of egg retrieval, which means that we can have both sperm in front of us and literally go, okay, this batch looks better than this batch, we're going to go with that, and then find the best looking sperm in that and use that for fertilization of the eggs. So now we're up to date. We're going to pick back up with the process of, you have the egg retrieval. With the egg retrieval, they then get all of those follicles out of her body. They take them to the lab. The first thing they identify is how many eggs are available out of those follicles, how many of those eggs are viable for fertilization, and then immediately get the sperm from whichever sample it is, the new or the old sample, and then find the best looking sperm and then get injecting those sperm into those eggs. So the cool part about that is by the time she wakes up, you know how many eggs have been retrieved. And then by the end of the day, you know how many eggs have potentially been fertilized. They then culture those fertilized eggs under a microscope for, I think, 2 days. And essentially over those 2 days, what they're looking for is healthy, I'm not sure if you've ever seen the video before, but it's like one cell turning into 2 cells, and then 2 cells turning into 4 cells, into 8 cells, into 16 cells, and you start seeing this like thing growing. Essentially what they're looking for is just a good rate of productivity, like production in those cells, and then also like getting to a certain point over a certain amount of time. So let's say, a great result would be you've got 10 follicles. Out of those 10 follicles, let's say you've got 9 of them that create eggs. That hold eggs. And then out of those 9 eggs, maybe 8 of them look really good and ready for fertilization. And then of all of those 8 eggs, you inject sperm into each one of them, and they all culture really well and they all develop into embryos. And then we go, sweet, we have 8 embryos that we can possibly, one of them we can put back inside of her, and then hopefully her body grabs it, and then you fall pregnant, and then the rest is natural. Right? So that's perfect world scenario. You get a lot of follicles, you get a lot of eggs that are viable, you get a lot of fertilization, and then you get a series of fertilized eggs that you can look at and go, right, that one looks the best, it's got the most amount of production, it looks the healthiest, it meets all these criteria, we use that to put back inside of her body and you get pregnant. Here's the cool part about it. All the other eggs that are fertilized that you don't put back inside the female can then be frozen, right? So let's say you've now got 7 frozen eggs, you've got 1 in her, you go off, you have a happy baby, and then 18 months later you go, fuck it, we'll get one of those eggs out, de-thaw it, puts it inside, body grabs it, and you can keep doing that. Now, there's also a scenario where you have 8 eggs that are fertilized, you put 1 in her, you put 7 on ice, and then she miscarries, or something happens, or her body doesn't take that egg back for whatever reason, and you can do that another 7 times and it just not work. There is no guarantee that this is going to work. There's no guarantee. It costs a lot of money to gamble with the idea that you might get pregnant, you also might not. They tell you your odds at the start. They tell you as a percentage. And the percentage is not something where you go like, oh yeah, fucking definitely do it, But to get a little bit philosophical with it, your whole purpose of being is procreation. It's to continue the species, and hopefully with each generation we get a little bit better, smarter, faster, stronger. So when you've made that decision, we're having kids, and they say, hey, this is going to cost, 15 grand. Are you sure you want to go ahead? The fuck else am I going to spend 15 grand on that's going to give me this much fulfillment? Who cares if it's a gamble? I'll spend 100 grand. I don't want to, but this is the purpose of it. And also, even if we spent 100 grand and it didn't work, I'd rather say that during my prime, during my literal golden years, I tried my very hardest to realize that goal, and the Creator had a different plan for me. That's fine. But one thing I will tell you is we've only been trying for 6 months. I got a lot of steam. I got a lot of money left to make this fucking happen. And that's not saying that I have the money right now. I don't. But there's something about this decision, and it is akin to deciding that you're going to win at business, that you're not going to fail, that this won't fall over, that you won't have another employer again. It's the same as when you decide to be a parent. You're like, this is fucking it. Not only will I make sure that that child is born, I'll make sure that they have everything they need forever. And I know that because I feel it in me. So it is a lot. And you're literally only ever as good as the step that you're on. And for complete transparency, we have egg retrieval tomorrow morning. And it's scary. It's scary as hell. Because we had essentially, starting from that first month where Riz got her period and she wasn't pregnant, we had like month by month by month by month, just bad news, bad news, bad news. Now you've got a low egg count. Now your sperm isn't that good. Oh, you've been trying on the wrong days. Now you got to do this meeting up and you got to have this appointment in Perth. Now you got to get your bloods done. Now you got to do a second semen. Oh, a little bit of good news. Your ovulation was early. Oh, you've actually got antibodies on your sperm. Okay. Oh yeah, we'll get the other sperm. We'll do this. It's going to be expensive. You're willing to do it. And then bang, you're in your kitchen injecting your fiance with God knows what, you know? And spiking those hormones in a female has huge effects outside of just creating the internal stuff that matters. It's like, you know, Riz is also going through hell with these massive emotional peaks and valleys of like positive and negative emotions. It's such a, I mean, that's probably the one part that people expect is there's going to be needles and there's going to be these, you know, huge emotional days where it's going to be hard and it's going to be tough. But I think the thing that sort of like goes overlooked is like by the time you're having those huge emotional days and you're dealing with those needles is like you're already sort of weathered by the whole situation because like this one thing that you're really sure that you want that you've had to prove over and over. And for us, we've been buying a pram, we got a cot. We're like, all right, the next car we get is going to be this. You know, we bought a bit of artwork the other day off Marketplace that we really liked at this particular shop, and we saw someone had it secondhand for a little bit less, so we bought that. And we've got the room, we've changed house. I mean, yeah, there's some for the business is great. We have more space to move, but the house was chosen 50-50 because it had space to put the business and a family in. The lawn out the back is the lawn that I want to roll around on with my kids. You know, these decisions that you make because you're like, no, that is what the end goal is. And it really doesn't matter the consequences in between. That's what the end goal is. So by the time you're like, all right, we're injecting, we're going through all these things and, you know, Riz has trouble sleeping, she has a sore back and all these very, you know, like tactile things that are happening. It's not just that moment. It's the fact that you've done everything to get to a point where that's now a necessity, you know, and part of the reason why I wanted to record this is because there is a lot of information produced by females about IVF, about the experience, about, you know, especially the poor girls who inject themselves. I mean, it's crazy that girls are out there having to do that, but, you know, I'm sure they have their reasons. But I think maybe something that's overlooked is, you know, his experience through all of this. Because there is something that ignites inside of you as a potential future father-to-be that you go, oh, I have to fucking step up now. Like I was taking life fairly seriously before. Like, do you know how serious you have to take life to find 15 grand to do IVF? Like it's a real thing. It's a real thing. And part of looking after Riz through those emotional peaks and valleys is understanding that I'm a rock in these situations, that I just need a nice, neutral, flat foundation for her to fall back on when things start falling apart for her emotionally. You know, and like one of the hardest parts of all of this was day number 2 on the second injection, the stuff that stops your body from getting rid of those excess follicles. The needle's just a little bit bigger for that particular medication. And being a syringe with a plunger, you also can't just sort of like grab it and stab it. You really have to like hold it. And because she does the pinch, she pinches her skin and then I inject the area that's being pinched, which is the method, by the way. You sort of like pinch any skin just around the belly button and you inject into that. Now, the second one, the needle pushed up against her skin, and instead of going in, it like really dug in, and then at the last minute it like penetrated and went in, and like I know that would have hurt. And then she responded to it as if it hurt, and then she cried, and it fucked me up, because you're like, oh, I just made her cry. I just stabbed a needle into her and made her cry, and now I have to deal with that, and like that's, like if you're a dude that's experiencing that, like I'm sorry, and I guess I'm like I guess I'm sorry, like I guess I'm sorry for myself. I don't know. I think I'm feeling feelings at the moment that I didn't think I was going to feel on camera. Yeah, but that's cool. It's all part of it. And like, I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy that I got to do it, but that's just, I didn't see that coming. And just like I said, like you never thought that you'd be injecting someone, and then you are injecting someone and you love her, and you're doing it because you have to. You would not do this if you had a choice, but you don't really have a choice at this point. You have to do it, and like to see her go through all these emotions, and like, we got a scan on Monday, that photo that I showed you before of the follicles, which, by the way, is its whole own thing. You're going to have this first scan. You're seeing if there are any follicles, because don't forget, we've got the low egg count. So we are going there like hoping that she's had a really good response to these IVF injections, which means that she would have follicles. And you get there and like, they scan the first side and there's 4, and you're like, wow, we have at least 4. In my mind, I'm like conservatively thinking like 4 or 5 total would be sick. They go to the other side, there's like another 4, 5, 6 maybe there, and you're like, holy shit, like there's actually like, this is a thing, and we don't know, like, okay, cool, there's somewhere between like 7 and 10 follicles there still might be no eggs. We don't know until tomorrow morning, but we were meant to do the egg collection either on Friday or Monday, and they don't tell you when anything is. They just say, look, it's all based off your test results and the scan results. And like when we had that scan, they're like, look, you might be doing egg collection on Friday, it might be Monday, so just sort of, keep your diary open sort of thing. And then by the end of the day yesterday, we'd been advised that you're booked in for egg collection. Your blood results we also had a blood test yesterday, your blood results indicate that you have early ovulation, which I said I'd be coming back to this later. That's the second time that the bloods have indicated that she has early ovulation, which then indicates that most likely she regularly has early ovulation, which means all of those prior attempts, especially month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, were probably having sex at the wrong time and in the wrong frequency. So because she does have that early ovulation, they're like, all right, we want to get a fertilized embryo back inside you ready for ovulation, which means we need to fast track the egg collection and fertilization. So we need you in on Wednesday. So we went from like, cool, we're just like in the middle of IVF to we're doing egg collection in fucking, when we found out it was 38 hours away. We had 2 hours between receiving that information and having to do the trigger injections that I was talking about. And then get to Perth today, be in Perth for, because it's early tomorrow morning. So it's like literally get there tonight, relax, do the thing, wake up early tomorrow morning, get her in. And then as soon as she's administered and an hour away from egg collection, I then go to the fertility place, produce a fresh sperm sample for them. And then that way they've got the frozen sperm from years ago and fresh sperm to see which one they'd rather use. So then as soon as her eggs are ready, it's bang, 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 and they're off to the races. So what does it look like from here? What does it look like from here? It looks like, obviously, for me, it was like, I'm doing all the logical decision making. So it's like, okay, what time are we going to leave? What do we need to take with us? What are the things that will make her comfortable? What hotel do we stay at? How much do I need to spend on booking that and getting that organized? And then what, when we leave here, what's the process? Are we getting dinner there? Do all the things? Because normally, I'm unashamedly, I have no control over our food or shopping or what happens. I just sort of rock up at the dinner table and there's food there. I'm very privileged in that way. So yeah, I'm very much in just like, all right, Riz had a terrible night's sleep last night and is just sort of battered and bruised today, feels a little bit, she said it's very akin to feeling hungover today. She's like, but I feel like I'm a bit jibbed because normally when you're hungover, you feel sorry for yourself, but you had a great time the day before, so you don't feel so bad about it. And she's like, I didn't really have a great day yesterday, so I just feel like a little bit robbed, if anything. So it's interesting. So, of course, I'm just trying my best to look after her. I'm trying to, get everything organised so someone can be in the house while we're away and our dog's looked after and, just all the bits and pieces. But yeah, then egg retrieval tomorrow and then potentially have a embryo to put back inside of her on Friday or Monday. So it's a very confronting moment, I think, because like you're sort of like, oh yeah, it's all cool, it's all good. And then egg retrieval feels like, the injections feels like the first serious thing where you're like, holy fuck, I'm putting a needle into her skin. Never thought this would happen. The egg retrieval is like, oh shit, now we're booking a hotel to stay at while she goes into hospital. She goes unconscious. They retrieve eggs out of her body. They take them into a lab. And trying to conceptualize what it means, seeing these images of potentially follicles that contain eggs, and the idea that like that purple round thing at the back there may be the first indication of what my future child would look like. That's a weird feeling, right? Like that's very interesting. Like we are potentially starting life tomorrow. So starting a new life tomorrow. So wrapping your head around that, I mean, I'm a very, I don't mean this in like a egotistical way. I'm a very deep thinker, and it really gives your brain a lot to sort of like chew on and try and conceptualize and understand and be okay with, because it's a very like unnatural thing to I mean, as compared to just, fucking having sex with someone and them getting pregnant. It's like this is so much involvement with so many other people in such a like clinical setting where you're just sort of like, okay, cool. This is what this is. I've now met people that are IVF babies. I now have talked with other people my age that have gone through the IVF process and understood what it was like for them. And I've heard really great stories for some people. I've had really heartbreaking stories from other people. And, one thing I keep going back to is you can only ever be excited about the next step. Like having the scan yesterday and like seeing those follicles, it's like, yes, like that's such a good number. But we're going to find out tomorrow if those follicles have eggs in them. And then the step after that is we're going to find out if those eggs are fertilized. And then the step after that, we're going to find out if one of them can be used as an embryo. And then the step after that is we're going to find out if her body's going to accept that embryo. And then the step after that is 8 months of, watching life grow inside of her and hopefully in a healthy manner. And then you've got childbirth, and then you've got the rest of your life to do all the things that happen, So it's such a, I don't know, it's like as a quite a logical, also emotional and, deep thinking man, experiencing this at 33, I think is a blessing, because I have enough sort of like life acumen under my belt to be able to emotionally handle what's going through internally and also be that anchor of support for her as she goes through what she's going through. Obviously, this still feels like early days. We're, over 12 months into trying for a baby, sure, but this is still early days. It feels like, like I would consider it being like in the thick of it when, when I see a bump on her tummy, I'm like, oh, it's happening, But, it's all part of the journey. Such a cliche thing to say, not really my style of thing to say, but it really is part of the journey. And I think one thing especially is that it is a journey for the bloke also. It's not just this totally isolated thing for her and the bloke just, I guess a lot of blokes do just go to work and come home and sort of like, how was your day? Oh, that's no good. We live and work from home. We've not really spent a day apart outside of, the odd holiday here and there. We're not the odd holiday. I went on a holiday by myself with a mate earlier last year. We spent all day, every day together, so it's like this really feels like this is us going through it. And for every part that I'm not going through, I'm making up for what she's going through. And dude, if you're a bloke listening to this because you're going through it and, maybe you're further along than what I am, maybe maybe you're, you've had a couple tries and, you still haven't got the result that you want, or maybe you're just starting the process, or maybe you haven't even had the fertility appointment yet. It's all good, baby. I love you. And if you're going through it, just pick someone in your life and just throw that burden on them, right? Because this is the thing, like, guys don't want to talk to anyone because they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to make my problem someone else's problem. Fuck them. This is such a unique moment in life to be going through and trying to handle by yourself. And I've fully taken advantage of the great support system around me and just got all these thoughts out of my head and into someone's, atmosphere, just to make sure that I'm not going crazy and that I'm not getting upset about the wrong things. I'm not getting excited about something that isn't true or whatever it might be. And it's been super rewarding, and I think it's healthy. I think part of me always knew that we'd be going through this, and part of me knows that the result will be worth it, And maybe you're not struggling. Maybe you're just a bloke and you're just doing bloke stuff and you're just cruising through it. Or maybe you're a chick listening. I don't need to figure out who's listening to this. I'm not. This isn't about giving advice. I'm just trying to give my perspective and sort of like add some light to this thing that, as I said, people sort of know peripherally, but they don't really know what it is. So I'm just trying to give sort of like an inside perspective. And I've been keen to record this solo pod, which is absolutely batshit crazy for anyone to want to sit in front of a camera and talk to it flat out without any pauses, ums, ahs, and whatnot. But I didn't want to wait until it was done. I wanted to show you what was actually going on in the middle of it and what these, like, it's very raw at the moment, and I think these emotions are very readily available for me to express while I'm digesting them, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I hope that somewhere in there's a tidbit of information for you that sort of makes your process and your journey a little bit easier. Now, one thing that I did do before I got started is I actually put into ChatGPT, hey, I'm about to record a solo podcast, and it's from his perspective rather than her perspective, because obviously this is something that's covered a lot by females. So what do you think I should cover, and what are some potential questions that might be worth answering for people that I haven't thought of on the fly? So let's just go through this really quickly. All right, number one, why am I even talking about this? Why you felt it was worth sharing your side, acknowledgement up front that you're not the one going through her experience, and why you hope this helps partners, men's, couples, or just awareness. Look, as I said before, this is just a totally unique thing for me. I feel it's like a unique thing that more and more people are going through. I feel like there is a lot of information for her to digest, and typically when, this process is 95% happening to her, right? Even the pregnancy is not, you jizz inside her and then she has the baby. Still though, I feel like one of my goals is to be as present and relevant and contextual and responsible as I can be for my life, which includes her, and that includes her emotions and her feelings and her opinion, her perspective, her experience. And I'm just trying to make sure that I'm as present as I can be for her in that regard. And that includes understanding what this process is and understanding what it's doing to her and what can I expect and what can I do to help and what is that? How does that work? Well, and especially like, dude, at the appointments and the meetings, like, I'm asking all the questions. I literally ask all the questions because I'm just like, look, Riz is probably overwhelmed right now. I'm coming at it from a logical point of view, like, okay, so we need to do this on this date, we do this on that date. When do we stop doing this? How does this work? Like, I was the one asking all the questions. Do we use the old semen or the new semen? The whole ethical discussion about ICSI and IVF, I'm like, dude, healthy baby, that's what matters. So I think that's sort of the why behind this. Also, I fully encourage you, if you're a man listening to this, to fucking step up. Even if you're already stepped up, keep stepping up, dude. Keep stepping up. It is your job to remain sexy to her. And the weird thing about guys is we think being sexy is like making sure we look a particular way. Dude, it's sexy to care. It's sexy to rock up. It's sexy to listen. It's sexy to go over and above every single fucking time. And this is such a perfect example of it. It's like this massive thing where you're like, yeah, I'll give you my attention for a couple of minutes every couple of days. Dude, I am fucking in it with her. And it is as rewarding to her as it is to me, because I get to know that I did everything I could do for her. And regardless of the outcome, we know we've got each other through the experience of fucking being in the trenches together, you know? And I say this in two parts. The one part is I'm telling me to continue being better and continue rocking up for her and for me. And also because, guy to guy, this is a fucking thing that we need to hear more of. There's so many ways to get distracted, find yourself looking at porn, you know, bloody looking at females too long and getting totally distracted about what matters. It's like, dude, if you've got a chick and you know you love her, even if you've had a moment of loving her more than what you love her right now, fucking fight to get that back, or fight to continue loving her, or find a way to love her more, harder, better. Like, that's the shit, dude. That's what it's about. That's living. You know, I used to think that life was all about not having too many responsibilities, just taking it easy, doing whatever. And I created that life for myself. I literally had a vasectomy. I created a place where I had no rules. I had no boss. I could make whatever decision I wanted at any point of the day. And the crazy part is, if you have too much of that, you realize that responsibility is what tethers you to this life. And it isn't the absence of it that gives you freedom. It's the acknowledging the responsibility that you take on and do it to the best of your ability. That gives you freedom, because then you know you did your part. You rocked up for you. And when you extend that circle into her reality and you rock up for her as well, that's when you're talking about life partner shit. That's when you can start making 100-year plans. That's when you can start making decisions about every single thing today, because you know tomorrow she's always going to be there. Give her no excuse to doubt you or to question you, and you can do whatever you want together, right? Crazy. Anyway, that's for free. What IVF looks like from the outside. This is number 2. So this grounds listeners who haven't been exposed to it. Watching someone you love inject hormones. Well, watching you inject hormones into someone you love, that should say. Seeing emotional swings that you can't fix. Appointment schedules and life revolving around cycles, and how clinical the process feels versus how emotional it actually is. And I feel like I've talked about that a little bit already, that like clinical feeling in context to it being quite an emotional journey that you're going through. It's like that continuous feeling of failure, or of not meeting the mark, not getting her pregnant. Is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with her? Does she feel like there's something wrong with her? Feelings of inadequacy, or feeling like you're not good enough because, you know, it should just be natural and it should be easy. You know, like definitely I feel like there was moments where I'm like, did I fuck up my potential to have a happy family with the woman that I love because I wanted to have sex with more girls and not get them pregnant when I was younger? Like, for sure. Like, it's a horrible feeling, you know, and, you know, like obviously it contributed to the fact. It's not the primary concern. It is part of the concern. I wouldn't have those antibodies if I never got a vasectomy, but also I've now got the experience of doing that, you know, on a wider spectrum. I sort of look around at the things that I've got now, and not the things that I've got, but maybe the progress that I've made, like what I've learned through podcasting with people that are smarter than me and brilliant minds and great sort of executors in their particular fields, the things that I've achieved in business, being able to have this sort of relationship with such a beautiful woman and being able to say that one day she's going to be my wife, she's going to be the mother of my children. I sort of get angry at myself for doing these stupid things when I was younger, this risk-taking behavior, these things that could potentially still catch up with me now and, you know, have detrimental effects to my health or to my reputation. Things that I did with people that I knew were unsavory at the time, and they still are unsavory. And why did I hang out with those people? Why did I make these decisions? Why did I take this risk? Why did I give it all away? Why did I, you know, put everything on the line? And it's because that's the sort of motherfucker I had to be to get to where I am now. I had to get rid of all my responsibilities to realize that responsibilities are what makes me who I am. They're what tethers me to the shit. And so it's very easy to sort of have these moments of like injecting your partner, seeing her cry, watching her get upset, is it my fault, or is it, am I the problem in this? And it's like, it's easy to sort of like look at it in the micro and go like, oh, it's, this moment, this shit is blah, blah, blah. When you zoom out, it's such a, I don't know, for a clinical process, it's such a human experience. I think a lot of things in life now feel very manufactured and produced, whereas like the pursuit of creating life and having a child with someone that you love is like maybe the most organic thing you can do. And even if it means going to a doctor's office and having to extract eggs and mix it with semen and create an embryo and put it back inside you, it's still something that, like I mentioned before, at the core of it, you're like, once you make that decision that you are going to create life with this person that you love, and that's the future that you see for the both of you, or for the 3, 4, 5 of you, whatever that family picture looks like in your mind, there is no other thought or plan that really matters, because everything is hinged around the success of that plan. And that's the fucking sauce, dude. That's the gravy. That's the point of it all. And everything else that I do, like I couldn't sleep this morning. I woke up at 3 a.m. and I thought, I can't sleep. I'm just going to go write. So I start writing. I creative write in my spare time. I start writing, and I write a letter to my unborn child. And through this letter, I'm writing this letter as if like I die not long after it's born. And it's like, this is for you, just so you knew what my intention was and how much I loved you before you even existed. Everything was for you. Every decision that I make is based around the idea of having children. Everything that I do in my business, every left instead of right that I take, or, like even with the business, it makes sense to hire more people and grow it bigger. But I would rather just deal with bigger companies, have less invoices, charge more, and still be able to do this business with 2 or 3 people forever, because it means we can all stay home with each other. I would rather bring the ceiling of my potential down a little bit if it means that within that ceiling I have my family, because there's no point having $100 million and never being home, right? Otherwise, what the fuck was it all for? Like, my goal is the family, is to be together, is to practice love every day, is to be able to teach those children all these things that I'm learning now. And it's like, I'm now at a point where I learn for me, but I learn for me so that I can teach them, that I can become the best father. It's like weird. It's weird. And these are all things that I feel maybe subconsciously I had a good concept of what it meant, but to put it in words and also to be going through this process and understand what it means gives it a total different meaning and a different understanding of myself. And, the beautiful part about all this is a lot of men sort of get to like 30 and they're like, I know who I am. Dude, I'm 33 and I'm like I'm just starting to scratch the surface as to who is Jake. And if you're a regular listener to the podcast, you probably watch me develop month by month, talking to these different people, growing my opinion, learning, expanding, and creating this sort of like version of myself that I feel is the truest form of me, not this idea of who I think I should be or how I should act, like the kid who decided that I was never going to have kids, I was never going to get married. It's like, dude, I was trying something on to see if it fit, and it did fit for a while. And as soon as it didn't fit, I was like, that's actually not the character who I am. The character who I am might actually be a really good dad. And he might actually be excited about being a dad. And in fact, he might actually move mountains to become a dad. And when I tried that on, it fit really well and still fits really well. So fucking here we go. Rightio. Number 3, the emotional load men don't talk about. This is where the episode gets weight. Feeling useless even when you're doing everything right, guilt for not carrying the physical burden, pressure to stay strong while quietly breaking down, suppressing fear so your partner doesn't carry your anxiety too, feeling selfish for struggling at all. Right. Feeling selfish for struggling at all. Pretty comfortable with myself. I'm happy to say when I'm struggling. I'm also pretty good to make sure that I don't usher that into her way. Maybe you're going through, I don't know what you're going through, dude. Pressure to stay strong while quietly breaking down. Guilt for not carrying the physical burden, feeling useless even when you're doing everything right. No, I don't think so. I don't think I've struggled with any of that. Feeling useless when you're doing everything right. If you're doing everything right, you're not useless. Like, that's just a logical equation that I feel like men don't really struggle with. How IVF changes the relationship temporarily. Number 4, This resonates hard with couples because sex becomes functional or scheduled, conversations become medical, loss of spontaneity, being more of a carer than a partner at times, and how tension creeps in even when love hasn't changed. Dude, if you're having these issues during IVF, this is because you're experiencing a heightened sense of what's already there. I think that, and this breaches into a bigger topic that I'm very passionate about. I spend all day, every day with my partner by choice. I used to be a truck driver working 12 hours a day or night, and I was just out of the house, all the time. And if I was at the house, I was sleeping. And for the bit of time that I got off, all I was doing was talking and thinking about trucks, and then also recovering from driving trucks or preparing to drive trucks. I was never really me. We were never really us. And the good thing that I got about buying a caravan and just getting away from having a job and saving money up enough that we didn't have to work for a period of time meant that I got to experience what it was like hanging out with this girl that I love all day, every day, which is what you do when you have your honeymoon period, right? You have this period of like just taking work off, having sex all the time, just enjoying each other, creating all these memories, and then it slowly dwindles off into normal life. You end up living together, but you're working jobs and you see each other 3-4 hours a day, except on the weekends. And that's if one of you doesn't have, or both of you have a hobby that takes you out of the house. And I love hanging out with Riz all the time. And I figured that out, and I changed my life to suit that need. And it's so easy to go, it must be nice for you. Brother, I have struggled for years to keep that dream alive. And I only now, 5 years into business and 8 years into knowing Riz, 7 years into knowing Riz, are we in a position where it's like, the business makes enough money that it looks like we can keep doing this for a while. The business makes enough money so that we can do IVF and go through this process. And also, we know that we love each other. We know that we want to have kids. We've had every difficult conversation we can possibly have under the sun, and we are not scared to continue having those difficult conversations as they happen, because IVF is just a exaggerated moment in your relationship. If anything, it's going to bring up things that you can otherwise not have to deal with in your relationship, and then force you to deal with them during an emotionally pensive time. Like for us, it's like we're just dealing with the emotional ebbs and flows of Riz's experience. We're not also dealing with things that you could just not talk about for months at a time because he's at work or she's off with her friends or doing something. It's no. Like we're actively not looking to have these uncomfortable conversations, but as they present themselves, we're also not looking to ignore them. Like I feel like sort of everyone's, I wouldn't say main goal, but like it's definitely part of like the normal sort of vernacular is to get yourself in a relationship, settle down, get married, have kids, do all the rest. But it's to find meaning in what those things mean, to settle down with someone, right? To settle down is to like narrow your scope to just them. This is the only ass that I'll ever look at ever again, right? And I mean that like, I'm not going to break that down. You do whatever I'm talking about naked ass. You see some other asses out in the world. You see it for a second. You're like, I know there's an ass over there. I'm not looking at it, but I've seen it, but this is the ass that I look at forever, right? And in that settling down, you go like, cool, all right, well, maybe there's things that I do that she doesn't like, or maybe there's things that she does that I don't like. And it's little stuff, like, hey, if you're going to use my toilet, can you make sure you put the seat down? Or, when you clean this particular thing, you leave the towels over here. You can put the towels over there. That's the easy stuff. Then you get the stuff like, well, when our baby's born, are they going to be baptized? Do you want to have kids? What do you think about getting married? Hey, you know how your parents do this? I wouldn't want to do that if we became parents. Those are the conversations that test the waters. They're the ones where you figure out whether like, all right, is this what I want to settle for? And then that thing, settle down, you get married. Oh, we're going to get married. What does that mean? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? Am I willing to make that commitment? When I stand in front of my friends and say, hey, this is the chick that I love and adore and I want to spend the rest of my life with, well, have you been telling them things about her that really piss you off? And while you're standing up there dressed in your fucking goofy suit and she's spent too much money on a ring and a wedding dress, and they're sort of giggling going, yeah, give this 6 months. Right? Don't just do it because you want the Instagram photo. Fucking ask yourself, ask her, have the question. We baptizing the baby or not? Right? And that's part of the shit, like tension can creep in at any time. The IVF is just a great example of a more intense part of your relationship. It is going to surface things that you probably, I mean, as a guy, sometimes you don't even know they're there. But also, I mean, let's say, you know, you're mid-IVF and your chick is going crazy over whatever, and you're seeing this part of her that you've never experienced before for whatever reason. Maybe she does this while you're at work. Maybe when she's in a bad mood, she doesn't normally, but she just can't take it anymore. And now you're seeing this monster. You've been with her for how long, and you've never experienced this part of her before, and all of a sudden you're like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Because, dude, I'm telling you, if it comes out then, trust me, daddy. I don't know for sure because obviously I don't have kids, but when kids come along and you haven't slept for 6 months and there's shit everywhere and she doesn't have time to bloody wash her hair and do this, and you're going to see that monster come out again. And trust me, if you're at that point and it comes out again and you're having doubts, it's too late. It's too late. You didn't take life seriously early enough. Dude, this podcast is a pep talk for men. It's not even about IVF. Oh, he figured it out. It's a pep talk for men. Number 5, the mental tug of war, hope versus protection. Right. This is a great male-specific insight, wanting to stay hopeful, also emotionally hedging to protect yourself. What happens after failed cycles? Celebrating wins quietly because you're scared to jinx it and living in constant what-if mode. Wow, dude. That's probably the realest part of all of it, right? So wanting to stay hopeful, protecting yourself and sort of preparing for the worst just in case, and then also not wanting to talk about it. I've definitely struggled with the not wanting to talk about it. So one of the previous podcasts that I did, I mentioned a little bit of it with the guest who was a IVF baby himself, actually. And as I was saying it, I immediately was like, fuck, I shouldn't be talking about it. It's gonna jinx it. It's gonna do it all wrong. It's this, it's that, it's the other. Dude, fuck that. If someone's going through it, like me right now, and they listen to someone who can articulate it and explain emotionally what's going on while also having some sort of like physical understanding of what's going on, I think that in that sense, information is power. And I think that if I say that now and someone's going through that now, that's one thing. If I say that now and someone's going through it in 6 months' time, in 6 years' time, and there's a voice of someone from the time that they were going through it, being raw and emotionally present for that conversation, then to be honest, I do feel somewhat of a duty to talk about it. I spoke about it with Riz afterwards, and she's like, no, don't feel any like apprehension to talk about it because it will be valuable to people. And I think, you know, I've said it 40 fucking times already, but that's the whole point of this. I feel like there's a lot of information for females to digest about the female experience. Hopefully this gives a little bit of context for males who are going through it and do want to show up for their partner, and they do want to have the most amount of information going into it, and they do feel that responsibility to understand what's going on. And that not wanting to jinx it, not wanting to talk about it, dude, talk about it. Talk about it. Make sure the people that you talk about it with matter. Make sure they're the sort of people who go home and they tell their partner about it, like, fuck, man, like, you know, Jake and Riz are going to IVF, and it's like, it's fucking cool, you know, I've seen this and I've seen that. I know they've been trying for 12 months, and it's just like, man, I hope you want that friend who goes home and talks about it like that. Like, that's the dude that you tell. Don't tell all your mates, you know? Because also you don't want to be telling all your mates like, oh, it worked or it didn't work, and then they're all fucking like, I don't know. I think chicks like doing that. Maybe dudes not so much. But yeah, that like wanting to stay hopeful, but you know, also planning just in case it doesn't go exactly to plan. Dude, at this point, it's not gone to plan. We're at this point because the plan wasn't like we didn't go to plan. Like I'm officially 12 months into the plan that didn't work, and that's why we're doing IVF. So, you know, that's a tough one. It's a tough one. I think also there's merit in you play to win. If you rock up on the start line of a race and you haven't won it in your mind, there's literally no fucking way you're going to win it in reality. And like I wrote that letter to my child this morning with the full intention that my child will read that one day. My child will read that letter one day. And this is a house that my family will, grow up in. And this process that we're going through is going to be the means that our children are conceived. And that's what it is. You know, when he told us the odds, when the doctor told us the odds of us getting pregnant through IVF, I said, yeah, that's fine. We're going to be the ones who it works for. And that's it. Play to win. And it's fine to have hope and it's fine to have stress, but we play to win. And I know that's big words to say before there's any guarantee. You know, like we're step 3 in a 6-step, 7, 8-step program before you even get a 8-step process before you even get to pregnancy. But dude, we're fucking playing to win. We're playing to win. And I think that's part of being that rock. That's being that just emotional stability is like, we're fine and we got this. Because I mean, realistically, my job right now, besides, you know, producing a semen sample tomorrow morning, is just being the confidence. Like I am a cortisol reducer, right? My whole job is to just keep everything on lock. It's all fine. I organize this, I organize that. You're upset? Come here. Let me give you a hug. Let me take you in. Let me give you some words of confidence and of wisdom. And then when you're happy, it's riding that wave with you. You know, when you want to go to Macca's, it's like, fuck yeah, I want to go to Macca's too. When you want to go to sleep, like, all good, let me make sure the house is quiet. That's what the responsibility is here, you know? And it's easier for me to carry that responsibility through when you're like, yeah, this is all good because at the end of it, we get a baby. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. All right, number 6, what you learned about yourself. Gay! What have I learned about myself? Patience you didn't know you had, limits of control, what support actually means, learning to just sit with discomfort, growth and empathy towards women generally. One thing that both Riz and I really experienced, well, we talked about and we've sort of had this realization in ourselves and then spoke about it because we talk all the time, remember, going back to that, was that, you know, you're driving past someone on the highway and they cut you off and you're like, this fucking dickhead doesn't know how to drive, should pull him out of the car and beat the fuck out of him, right? Might be going through IVF, might have a really angry missus at home, might be just struggling to keep shit together, might be 2 years into their journey and still not getting pregnant, might be 10 years into their journey, still not getting pregnant, every year, both getting older, sperm mobility going down, egg count going down. And then all of a sudden he cuts you off because not only that, he's busting for his shit to get home and you're just the person in his way. It's so easy to sit there and go, look at this dickhead, instead of sitting there and going like, oh, I hope he's okay. I hope she's okay. I hope that they meet the goals that they've set for themselves. I hope that they get that fulfillment of finally having a child after all this time. I hope the child's healthy. I hope it's all good. And that just compounds across everyone. Everyone is just living at the same time, finding out that their mum has cancer, making their first $1 million, getting their dream car, breaking their leg on the way to work, being dumped by their girlfriend via text. Just everyone is just always constantly bang, 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 always going through something. You know that, I don't know if you've seen the meme, but it's like an apartment building and it's got all the lights on in, like, it's like nighttime and there's like, you know, maybe 100 windows and there's like 15 lights on all in random spots, and it's like literally that, like, just made their first $1 million, just buried their parents, just had a little baby, just got that job promotion, just sold their car that they promised themselves they'd never sell. And you're like, shit, dude, everyone is always going through something. You know, like yesterday we woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, left Bunbury at 4 o'clock in the morning, pulled over on the side of the road to inject 2 needles into her at 6 o'clock in the morning, had a blood test at 7 o'clock in the morning, had a scan at 8 o'clock in the morning, home by 11 o'clock in the morning, and then by 3:30 p.m. we're being told that we have egg retrieval surgery booked in for the Wednesday, and she had to have another 2 needles in 2 hours. You're just like, dude, if you're just a passerby looking in from the outside, you're like, yeah, the black ink guy's fine. He's making T-shirts or something, you know? So I think that part of, like, just sort of having a bit more empathy for the outside world and dude, women are just fucking powerful, dude. Like, it's to think that, you know, she's gone through all of this before her body creates a life. Like, that's one of those things that, like, as a dude, you hear over and over and over, like, yeah, you know, women create life, they're the portal of life. And you're like, yeah, fucking get over yourself. Move something heavy and then talk to me. But just sit in it for a second, right? And what I was going to say is you hear that so often, but then when you start to think like, oh, that's the woman that will create life that has 50% of my DNA, it just sort of like hits totally different. And I'm sure it hits different again when you see that happen, when life exits her and comes into this physical realm, and that little bundle of bones and organs is like the most important thing to you, you know? But yeah, the fact that like women are just like the portal for life to enter into the human experience is just nuts to me. It's just nuts, you know, and we all have a mum, and, you know, like a certain percentage of you listening right now either are a mum or want to become a mum, and that means going through that process. Like I've got such a deeper like love and respect and understanding of like who my mum is, because she went through the process of growing me inside of her and then giving birth to me, and then, you know, watching me grow up to be a podcaster, which must be just horrible for her, but I'm kidding. So yeah, that really sort of like isolated that, maybe, you know, empathy, awareness, respect, concern to a certain point. You know, like I've always sort of had the, you know, like I got taught, you know, hold the door for women, but, you know, like you see a woman with a pram, 100%. You're like, yeah, open the door. I see dads with prams that are my age, and, you know, you're looking in, you're like, oh, how old? You know, what is it, boy or girl? Hey, what's going on? Like, having fun? Like, oh, what's the, like, oh, they rolled over this week. That's fucking crazy. Like, all these things. It's just, yeah. I think just sort of like having a bit deeper understanding about humanity and being able to relate in a different way to people around you, that before it's like, oh yeah, you know, the guy down at the cafe who's got you know, I think his boy's like, you know, 6 or 7 months old. You're like, yeah, that's cool. Now you're like, dude, you got a 7-month-old? Fucking talk to me about that. You know, asking people on the podcast, like my most recent guest, I'm like, what's it like taking a baby home from the hospital? You go to the hospital without a baby and then you leave with a baby. What the fuck, dude? You know? So I think it's just that deeper connection to the human experience and the outside world. I've talked about it too long. It's boring. Right. How men can actually support their partner? Like I said before, just fucking be better. Show up consistently, not occasionally. Learn the process without being asked. Don't compare journeys. Protect your partner from unnecessary opinions. Take admin load where possible. Know when to shut up. So pretty much that's everything that we've already covered. Knowing when to shut up is a great point, and also you'll know. If you don't know when to shut up, like if you don't have that trigger in your mind that goes like, oh, she gave me that look, or she said this, or she walked away from me, or whatever it is, that should be your goal. Learn that about your chick, when you should be shutting up and when you should be talking. Most of the time you should be shutting up. That's my advice. Right, the stuff that no one warns you about: how isolating IVF is socially, friends accidentally saying the wrong thing, pregnancy announcements hitting differently, how long IVF stays in you. All right, this is all good stuff. How isolating IVF is socially. From my perspective, I haven't missed out. I've elected to not be involved in particular things that have been happening, especially in the past 10 days, because of the fact that we're going through this. Riz being on things that are going to affect her hormones, her mood, and her emotions. I want to be with her as much as possible, and that comes at the cost of hanging out with my friends, and that is an equation that I have no trouble with. If it's Riz or my friends, I love my friends. Riz will win every time. If it's my child or my friends, it's my child, right? It can be isolating. It is the most rewarding sort of isolation possible, and also I don't want to say make the best of a bad situation, because it's not a bad situation hanging out with her more, but it's like, all right, you know, I had a friend who had his Bucks party on the weekend just been. I was meant to be going. Up until the last moment I was going, because we didn't know we were starting that second round of injections right up until the last moment. And I went from, all right, I'm going to be getting written off and having a fat time on Saturday to I'm going to be staying home. And it's like, cool, well, let's pretend we do get pregnant. What are all the things that you wish you had done before you got pregnant? And you start looking around and going like, fuck, I need to pull out that tree. Should probably, all right, get that done. Oh, actually, there's heaps of shit I need to get done. And then you get busy doing that. Like that's sort of a thing. Like expect it, if you're at a point now where you're now looking at IVF as an option or you're in the middle of IVF, it's like, dude, I think one thing to do is to really appreciate the moment that you're in and squeeze the juice from it, all the juice that you possibly can from it. Like right now, like I said, I sort of wanted to record this, maybe when it's all done, we've got a great positive result. And I can say, this and this and this happened. Then we got pregnant. Now everything's all good. Dude, I'm in the middle of it. And I know this is a weird example because I'm a guy with a podcast who can talk to a camera for hours at a time and not have any dead air or not run out of things to talk about. But if this is the thing, then do this right now. And for you, that might be, I don't want to say having that uncomfortable conversation, but maybe there's like a thing to go like, hey, if we do get pregnant, we have a healthy baby and all this happens, what do you think we should do with this thing, or education, or how involved are your parents going to be, or what can I expect from this, or how do you think our life is going to change, or what do our finances look like, and what happens if we need to sell one of the cars, or whatever it might be. Get that happening. This is the moment. This is the season for it. Friends accidentally saying the wrong thing and how pregnancy announcements hit differently. Right. Don't congratulate someone for starting IVF. Right? That's the one thing that we've got is like people just like sort of like, we're starting IVF. People who've been through it before are just like, okay, cool. Like, how's it going? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Like a very sort of grounded approach. And then, also the negative responses, the responses that I've had that haven't been the response that feel right always come from a good place. Right? So, I had a friend saying like, we started IVF, and they're like, oh, it's fucking sick. Like, dap me up, like pull in, like, man, you must be stoked. I'm so excited for you, rah, rah. And it's like, do you know what that means that we're starting IVF? Like, I would get it if I said, hey, we're trying for a baby, fucking how cool's that? Hopefully, get pregnant soon. Like, dude, that's sick that you guys have made that decision and you've started it. But it's like, if we're starting IVF, it's because we're got to a point where we can't do it by ourselves. We now need medical intervention. It's not necessarily something to be celebrated. It is something that should be like, now, if we had been through this and we're out of it and all that, and someone said they're starting IVF, my big thing would be like, hey man, my phone's on for you for the next 2 weeks. I don't normally answer calls at night. I don't normally answer calls during the weekend. I'm putting you on the list so that if you call on my phone, or do not disturb, it's still going to call. You call me at any time you want to talk about something, we'll talk about it. And even if it's something that I don't know and I'm just of ear for you to vent to, I'll be that person for you. You got me for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on how long this goes on. If you need me, you call me, all right? Man, also expect this from her. Listen to my podcast about me talking about IVF. That'll help. That's the sort of response that makes sense, guy to guy, right? So pregnancy announcements are a little bit different, especially if you've got every single fucking friend around you getting pregnant while you're trying not to. Like it does get to a point where you're like, no, I'm not happy for you. I'm jealous. Like I'm hurt. And that's okay. That's fine. It's okay. You're allowed to be hurt. Don't take away from their experience, obviously, but also don't avoid the feelings that you've got to feel, because it's okay to want something so fucking bad that it brings tears to your eyes when you don't get it. That proves that you want it, all right? So one thing that I find is when those announcements do come up, people are like, oh, we're pregnant, so good, or, especially that we're trying for a baby and then getting pregnant immediately, like that really fucking, that's different, that's different to it's different to accept, because then you start having those questions like, well, why do they deserve that? Why don't I deserve that? Did I do something wrong? Am I not worthy of it? Should I not have had a vasectomy? Am I a piece of shit? I shouldn't have cut my hair off. Why did I quit speed skating? All these things, right? But I think it's not bad to have those feelings. Obviously, I would never say that to the people who are having babies. And also, like, if I feel those when, hey man, like we're pregnant, I'm always just pause, cool, know what's going on in me, and then respond the same way I would want someone to respond to me if I just told them that information, And also, here's a good little, when someone buys a new car, you can assume that because it's like close to one of the most emotional decisions someone can make outside of having kids is buying a house or buying a car, typically an expensive car as well, because you're spending so much money on it. So let's say your mate rocks up and he's just bought a yellow Mazda MX-5. Now, if you don't know what an MX-5 is, either Google it right now because you have a phone, or just know that it's like a little convertible that middle-aged women, maybe young women even drive, but typically a man should never drive. Your mate pulls up in a brand new yellow MX-5. The first thing you say is, fuck yeah, that's sick. I love the yellow. Soft top as well. That's going to be so good in summer. That's unreal. You wait 6 months and then you give him so much shit that he eventually sells it. All right? Don't fuck him on the first day, because in that moment, he's probably already got a little bit of buyer's remorse, probably going like, fuck, why did I get it in yellow? I've already burnt the tops of my ears and my shoulders. I shouldn't have got a convertible. What he's looking for from you is to be a mate. Now, times that by 40 fucking million, and he or she has just rocked up and she's like, we're pregnant, we're going to have a baby. Oh my God. That is so fucking cool. Your life is about to change. I'm so excited for you. Are you hoping for a boy or girl? Do all the things. Then go into your car and cry into the steering wheel because it still hasn't happened for you. That's how you deal with that moment. Because heaven knows one day you're going to be telling them that you're pregnant, and you don't want them to be like, yeah, well, fucking enjoy that, because that's what you did to them. Hey, this is a fucking man-to-man pep talk, right? I'm just handing out lessons for free. You're welcome. All right. Pregnancy announcements hit different. How long IVF stays in your head, even outside appointments. Yeah, I mean, you're in that season of IVF. It's all you're thinking about. It's the first thing you want to talk about with everyone. Every time you have some sort of progress or a new bit of information, the first thing you want to do is call everyone and say, this happened. I mean, to be expected. It's like when you buy a house. It's all you think about for 3 months. It's when it's one of those moments in your life. It's all encompassing and has the potential to completely rock your shit in a positive or negative way, right? So the emotional hangover after cycles, just going to leave that one alone. What to say to other men going through it? Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't say any of that. So you're not weak for struggling. You're not selfish for feeling pain. You don't need to have answers. Showing up imperfectly is still showing up. Talk to someone even if it's not your partner. That last one, yeah, talk to someone even if it's not your partner. Really, really think that's a good idea. As far as like you're not weak for struggling, you're not selfish for... Dude, in a moment of struggle, you are weak. That's part of being a human. I think it's the concept of what weak means to people is really the problem. Dude, there are moments where I'm extremely strong and I persevere and I push through, and there are moments where I'm extremely weak and I fall into a fucking pile of shit on the floor and cry until I blow snot bubbles out my nose. That's part of the experience of being a human. And one day I get to teach my son and or daughter those things. Feel your emotions. Don't avoid them. Feel them. Go through them. If your partner is feeling negative emotions, let's not double down and both be a pile of shit on the floor. Let's take turns. That's usually fairly productive. But yeah, dude, you got to feel weak for a little bit to get through it. Feel weak for a little bit. And then once you're done feeling weak, feel strong. Like, I know that's a real like archaic, barbaric way of thinking about it. Sort of worked for me my entire life. It's like, yeah, right now I'm sad. I'm going to be sad. And then when I'm done being sad, well, I got that out of the way. I've been sad. And now I'm going to be neutral or happy or excited or whatever it is. Now, there are parts of your life where you be sad and then you're like, all right, that's out of the way. And then you're like, oh, but I'm still sad and I can't be happy. Keep being sad. Keep being sad until all the sad is out. And if you're having trouble not feeling sad, that's when you need to start looking at environment, habits, ways of doing things, and the people you're hanging out with. Because if it's a continuous thing, yes, there's a small chance that it might be something neurologically going on. Most of the time, it's the people or things that are constantly around you that are keeping you in that state of mind. And usually things like diet, exercise, recovery, positive affirmations are a really good one. Will get you out of that. So yeah, be sad and then don't be sad. 101. You're not selfish for feeling pain. You don't need to have all the answers. You can ask questions. You can learn more. Education is power. The two of you having a lot of information is definitely better than one of you having information, which is definitely better than no one having information. You really want to know like what's going on, how does it work, what's involved, what does it cost, what to expect, what can I do, what can she do, what's the duration of this, all great questions. And showing up imperfectly is still showing up. Exactly, dude. Dude, you're better off practicing. And even if those practices are bad performance, you're still practicing, right? And I mean this as in like, if you want to be able to, shoot the basketball from the 3-point mark, right? The first like 1,500 times you do it, you might get a handful in. But after 1,500, it starts getting a little bit easier, right? You start going, I got to do my feet like this. I got to put my hands like this. It helps if the ball is pumped up. It helps if I'm inside, not outside, and there's no elements. It helps if there's not other people on the court. And all these little things that you learn that weren't obvious the first time you shot the ball, but were extremely obvious 1,500 shoots in. Right? You have to picture your life as a continuous practice of you being you and showing up into your life and performing to the best of your ability and actually having an idea of what the fuck is going on. That comes through practice. So keep on showing up, whatever that means. And let's say you want to, that thing before I'm like, start having uncomfortable conversations and you're like, actually, yeah, I do avoid having uncomfortable conversations and I'm gonna fucking try my best. Well, next time something pisses you off and you go like, hey, you know how you fucking, instead of doing that, realize that there's a trigger, there's something you don't like and you go, ooh, this is one of those times I'm going to have an uncomfortable conversation. How can I address this without me sounding like the aggressor? Or how can I bring this up with her where it doesn't immediately go to a fight? Or how can I already have a compromise ready if I ask her to change her behavior, how I'm going to change my behavior as well so that we meet in the middle rather than me expecting more from her than what I'm going to give back, right? It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. You just have to start doing it. And trust me, as someone who's had literally thousands of uncomfortable conversations at this point, as an example of something that you can practice and get good at, I'm not saying that this is the thing to practice is uncomfortable conversations, just as an example of something. Dude, now it's funny, like Riz will do something and I'm like, hey, I know I'm a loser and this doesn't matter. Do you mind not doing this? Because it does. I always feel like this when I see that and it pisses me off. And I'm pretty sure if you knew that that's how I responded to it, that you probably wouldn't do it. And then usually she'll go, yeah, I'm happy to do that. How's about every time you do this, you don't do that, and instead you do this. It's like, yeah, cool. If that makes you happy and this makes me happy, we dap up, we keep moving. It's a good thing, So I would say like that is great. Showing up imperfectly is still showing up, and also practice perfection until perfection becomes the expectation, right? And also, if you're not on the pursuit of perfection as a man, the fuck are you doing? I'm gonna leave that there. All right. Do men get emotionally affected by IVF? Sure. Is it okay to feel resentment or frustration? Yeah, it's okay to feel it. Just don't project it, And also exercise it out. Go for a run. How do you stay strong without disconnecting? I've covered all this shit. The one thing that I haven't covered that I do want to talk about is the money side of things. The financial part of IVF is probably, you would argue outside of creating the life itself is probably the most important part, because if you don't have the money to begin with, it's just not an option. The good thing about having sex and generating life is that it's pretty free, like once you've met the person and you're consensually having sex with each other, everybody already has the equipment they need to carry out the task. So, you have sex, you get pregnant, and it's not really up until, somewhere in pregnancy where she starts needing things, or you've got to go it's dramatically cheaper than having to go through IVF. So probably wondering, what are the expenses related to IVF? So First of all, starting from the start, you're going to go to the doctor somewhere between 6 and 12 months into having issues falling pregnant naturally, right? So that doctor's appointment is, after Medicare gives you money back. Let's say it's bulk billed even, So let's say somewhere between $0 and $100 for your first doctor visit. Then you go get your bloods done. That's done at Clinipath for free. You get your results. You go have another appointment. That's bulk billed $0 to $100, right? So let's just say those first two, I've been to the doctor twice, and let's call it $50 for each of those trips. You then get recommended to a fertility specialist. Now, we elected to go with one that our friend had been through before, which was this one in Perth, and admittedly, it's in North Perth, so it's like 250 k's away. So you have the first few initial consults where it is their telehealth, but the consults themselves are worth about $100 each. Now, if you were traveling, you could then add another $100 onto each of those because obviously you're going up and down every time. But for us, it's telehealth, so let's say $100 a consult. I think you get a little bit back to Medicare. Right. Then I had my analysis and also semen storage once they got it from the other place. Now the semen storage was $350. This isn't going to occur to everyone. I'm just telling you the costs of what I've experienced so far. And I think the semen analysis I did through them was maybe $200 or $400. Let's call it $300. Now Riz also got the additional blood test. Obviously we got them done here in Bunbury, the period tracking. They're all for free because they're done through Medicare. So far we're now at a point where we've done the doctor's appointments to get there. We've then gone to the fertility specialist, got the semen analysis done again, had all those consults. That's all good. Cool. Oh, yep, the semen storage. Okay, cool. So far already we're up to 7, 8, 9. We're under just under $1,000. We haven't done anything yet, right? So we then get to the point where the doctor's like, all right, we want you to come up. We're going to have an appointment and we're going to discuss what the next move is, which is for us in this instance was actually starting IVF. It was deciding whether we're going to go IVF or ICSI, and it's what are the next steps. So we then have that appointment followed up by a nurse's appointment, which I think that appointment was $100 with the doctor. We then have a $350 payment, which is a down payment on the IVF process. So we actually get that back. So whether we count that or not, we're just going to keep it on the thing there. So I'm going to now break it off. We've had that first $1,000 that we spent on doctor's appointments and getting to the IVF fertility place. We're now counting up from there. So we then have, I think we got 5 pens of Pagovirus, 2 boxes of so Pagovirus is the one that produces the follicles. We then got the next one. I don't know any of the other names, so I don't know why I rattled off that name. But the next one, we then got 2 boxes, which is 10 needles of the one that stops your body from destroying the other follicles and keeping them. We also got the 2 trigger ones, the 2 trigger injections, and also some other capsules for after the egg harvesting. Now, this is interesting. We spent, I want to say, including swabs and some numbing cream, because we got told that numbing cream can help if you struggle. I think we spent $150 on medication. Now, here's the really interesting part. When you look at the box, it tells you the name, the date, how much to have, and the recommended retail. The recommended retail on all of those was under $50. Like everything was like $20, $30-something. Now, we got multiple boxes of some of them, and I know even what I've said now with those prices, it adds up to more than $150. We only paid $150. On those boxes, if you look at the recommended retail alongside what we paid was always a fraction. One of them was $3,600, and I think we paid $40 for it. Some of them were in the hundreds, some of them were in the thousands, but regardless, we walked away with, I want to say it would be at least more than like 15 grand worth of medication that we paid literally $150 for. Now, I'm guessing that is because we had a referral as fertility, because we got a referral because we had fertility issues. That shortfall, I'm guessing, is subsidized by the government. I might be wrong. But we definitely didn't pay the recommended retail. So we're not even counting what those drugs are worth if you don't get it with a referral, Okay. Now, we've spent 150 there. The pricing structure for your egg collection, fertilization, and putting back into the female is based off how many eggs actually get fertilized. So the price jumps from like, I think $6,500, $8,500, or $6,500, $8,000, and $9,000. It's got like 3 tiers. And essentially it's $9,700 if you get between 8 and 12 fertilized eggs or harvested eggs. It might not be fertilized, it might just be harvested. And then it goes down, like if you get between 5 and 8, it's like $7,000-$8,000. And then if you get between like 2 and 5, it's $6,500. So essentially you work it off like, all right, let's play as if we're going to win. We're going to get 9 eggs. So it's like $9,700. That pays for them to give you the prescription for the medication, for the egg retrieval. So that's actually the doctors getting the eggs, the nurses getting the semen sample and the eggs and creating life, culturing those eggs until they become a fetus. Not a fetus, is that the word? Embryo. And then putting that embryo back inside of her. And this includes all of your scans. It includes analysis of all your blood tests and basically having like a 2-week or 3-week period where they're accessible during business hours for you to ask any questions during the process. So that is, let's say, $9,700. It can be as cheap as, I think it's like $6,500. Don't quote me on that. That's their prices as well. Now, you also have hospital administration fees and your anaesthetist fees. So that is $2,000. Now, that can be covered by private health. You do need to have a gold level of private health with Medibank, and you need to have that at least 2 months before you get that, before you go to hospital. You can't, I asked all the questions, you can't upgrade it the day before, or I couldn't update like the week before. You can't backtrack it 2 months, so you don't have to wait the 2-month period. You can't get it in 2 months and then claim on this. If you don't have it around the time of the hospital admission, you don't have it. So there's another $2,000. And then, of course, so for that doctor visit, there was one trip. We had another scan as a second trip. We've then got going up for the egg retrieval, and then you've also got putting the eggs back. You got 4 trips to Perth. Each of them costs, let's say, $100. It's not $100, but by the time you put fuel in the car and you get a meal here and there, you got $100. So there's another $400. And then you've also got, we were fairly conservative. I think we spent about $500 on accommodation. Accommodation isn't necessarily needed, but for the sake of Riz being comfortable, I mean, I don't want to be leaving at fucking 2 o'clock in the morning to get her egg retrieval done to then put her back in a car and drive her another 2 hours home again. It's like, I'd rather just wake up in Perth, good to go, and then also have that night, tomorrow night in Perth. So it's like she has that entire day just to go back to the hotel, just relax. If she wants food, we can get food. If she wants to do nothing, we can do nothing. So that was $500. So all in all, I mean, you're looking at, say, around 9,700 to 10. It's just easier. You're looking at 100, 450 plus 150 is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 1,000 there, 1,500. So you're looking at 10 plus 2 is 12, plus 1,500 is 13 and a half, plus 5 is 14. You're looking at 14 grand plus the original $1,000 at the start. You're looking at, roughly $15,000. Obviously, that's allowing for travel, that's allowing for accommodation, that's allowing for a couple of meals here and there. It's also allowing for the additional cost of freezing the sperm that we brought and the transfer fee of bringing it over from the other place. I didn't even put that in there. Medicare does rebate you a particular amount. I think if you do the 9,700 with the 10 follicles, 10 eggs situation, you get roughly $4,000 back. So look, let's say you spend 15 and you get 4 back. You're out of pocket $11,000. There is zero guarantee that you're going to develop follicles. There's going to be eggs in the follicles. The sperm is going to fertilize the egg. If it does, the body accepts that. embryo, and then it becomes a successful pregnancy. But that is the cost. That is what it is. And like behind the scenes, around Christmas time, I was looking to sell my van and get into another car, something that I sort of was like rewarding myself in a certain aspect, because I've spent the past 5 years sort of grinding and just sort of like, I sold the original ute that I had to get into a van so that I had something to do deliveries and stuff with. And as it turns out, I wasn't doing as many deliveries as I thought. So I sort of just had a massive van that I would occasionally drive around when I needed to, but didn't really use most of it. And then, I just sort of thought, there's a cool car that I want over there that's worth about this much. I'll see if I can sell my van and get that. And I sold my van and went to go buy that car, and actually pulled out right at the last minute, because in the process of selling my van, I sort of realized that we didn't need 2 cars. And weirdly enough, I sold the van for about how much we need for IVF. And as I mentioned before, I believe I'm perfectly timed and magically placed. So I just sort of took that as a sign of like, all right, let's right now just use that money for the IVF. So essentially the IVF sort of feels free. See how long we can go without that second car, save money on insurance, registration, fuel, servicing, and just sort of see what it feels like. So far, we're a month into having just one car and it's working just fine. And we have the money to do this IVF, which, to give a little bit more just transparency on the situation, like this is week 3 into January of 2026. And, I've had a fair amount of inbound work come to me, as it does organically in the business. A lot of repeat customers, a lot of people who have known about me for a while and were waiting for the new year to get a hold of me or whatever. But we've done zero marketing. I haven't really followed up any warm leads from last year that didn't end up coming through. It's been a little bit quiet, actually, and it typically is in January. Typically, people aren't spending heaps of money on uniforms in January. And I don't know. I think maybe the past 2-3 years I would have sort of stressed out a little bit, like, I got to make this much money to live every week, and there's bills that need to be paid, there's things that need to be happening, but I can survive at the moment, and I'm just sort of feeling good. I feel like the van sold at just the right price at just the right time. Bailing on the other car just felt right, and I was just like, all right, just let me not buy that. And then, I'm not super busy right now. I'm not busy in a way where when we got that call and we got told that we had to go to Perth for this egg collection on Wednesday, it's like, cool, let's get the hotel that we need. The hotel that we decided on was just around the corner. And it's not the best hotel, but it's like, it's just around the corner. It costs this so much money. Okay, yeah, cool. We could stay for just one night, make a week. No, stay for 2 nights. Let's be comfortable. I don't have all this work that needs me, so it's like, I'm just, what I'm saying is you could have the perspective where you go, fuck, I got all these expenses. I got to make sure that I need to make sure that more work is coming so that we're all good. It's like, actually, sometimes the universe hands everything to you on a platter and you fuck it up by thinking that you know better than the universe. I'm not going to get all woo-woo, but I do believe in that perfect timing shit, and I do believe that right now there's a reason why heaps of work isn't coming to me. I know that January typically isn't that busy in the past, and I know that right now I could be spending all of this time, instead of doing even this, creating ads, putting them on Facebook, and then sitting by the email and responding to everything that comes in. I know that works, but it's like right now I'm just going to be there for Riz. I'm just going to assess every opportunity that comes towards me and filter it through does this affect the us getting pregnant thing? And if it doesn't, I'm not treating it with the same importance that maybe I typically would in this scenario had we not been going through what we're going through. So yeah, that's my 2 cents, like it's a lot. It's also not. It's very unique and different. And all you can do is just do one step at a time, be excited for the small wins, be there for her, be there for yourself, be honest with yourself, and just fucking play to win. My name's Jake Kerr. This has been a Black Ink podcast solo about IVF through his eyes. I hope you got something you can take from it. Please please, I'm not just saying this. I know you hear it on every podcast, but fucking subscribe to my channel on YouTube, dude. It actually means a lot. It changes shit for me if you subscribe. So if you got something out of this, drop a comment, subscribe, DM me, let me know what your thoughts are. And if you're a dude going through it, I love you. And I hope it all turns out well for you and your girl and your future children. Be good to your mum, because I'm out.